Rest in peace, George. Rest in peace. We got another narc off the streets. Locked up for life. Can't stand this heifer. This is Sarah right here. Megan from The Exorcist. Oh, yeah. This is Sarah all the way. All right, let's get into this one. Okay, so tonight we're going to be doing recaps. Well, this afternoon, we're going to do the recaps. We're doing the recaps of Psycho Sarah, day 6 of the trial. Now, day 6 of the trial, we're going to be getting into the text messages, the closing arguments, and the verdict. The verdict is guilty, guilty, guilty. I am so glad. I cannot stand this woman. The nerve of her to get up on this stand and claim that she was the one being abused. Are you flipping kidding me? Have you you know what I realized about with this trial, and the same thing like with Surat. They knew for the fact that they was not going to win. She turned down that plea deal because she knew she didn't care. Her whole purpose was to go to trial because she wanted to degrade and humiliate Jorge Torres. And at the same time, she wanted to throw it into their family's face, into his family's face. That's the only reason why she did this. Because that's why she was smiling through the whole trial and everything with the little smirks. This is how these narcissistic people are. All right. Let's get into this because we got a lot to cover. All right. So first, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Donna Just Being Real. Make sure you hit the like, share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. And if you need to reach out to me, look at the description. You can find my email. If you need a coaching, you have a viewers request, or you need to speak to me on something privately on the side, hey, everything's confidential. We can go from there. All right. So we're going to focus on the closing arguments. First, we're going to hear prosecution. Then after that, we're going to hear the defense. I didn't get a chance to hear it, but I did get to hear the verdict. Friday. Woo-hoo! It was a happy Friday. Shout out to George. Oh, rest in peace. Oh, you're such a beautiful person. All you wanted was happiness. All you wanted was love. All you wanted to do was to take care of your family. That's it. But unfortunately, this psycho woman came along by the name of Psycho Sarah Boone. I know your ex-husband is just wishing he could take that last name away from you. I know. He wants it back. I don't blame him. Okay, let's get into this. Then after this, all right, first we're getting into, I'm sorry, I might have said it wrong. First, we're going to be getting into the text messages. I apologize. First, we're going to focus on the text messages, and then after that, we're going to get into the closing arguments. Then after the closing arguments, we're going to get into the verdict. All right, let's get it, ladies and gentlemen.
Permission to publish from States 21, which was previously marked as P for identification. You may proceed, sir.
Now, Susie Q, you got me over here stopping the live stream. I have not seen you in a minute. I see you, girl. Good to see you. Good to see you. And I see you too, Lisa. And I see you too, Deb. All right, recap time. And how you doing, Susie Q? How you doing? All right, let's get it.
Again, this is a DVD exhibit with 2 folders in the main directory. One entry is in a folder called Attachments. Another is a PDF labeled Extraction.
I'm sorry if you spent $50 on it, but now...
For the record, it is 108 pages, and the entire document will go back to the jury, and there will be a laptop provided to them to utilize this exhibit. For purposes of publication, I'm going to go by page number and date unless something requires more specificity. And for to and from, I'm going to just use the name of the contact if one exists or the phone number if one doesn't. On page 1, creation time for notes, 7:49, asking Jorge or George not to be despicable to me, making more drink after he guzzled his and I shared mine. On page 2, date March 8th, 2018. You are now in a relationship with Jorge or George on Facebook. metadata entry 100014, etc. for Jorge Torres to Sarah Boone, owner. Page 3, May 21st, 2019, from 407-716-8684 to Melissa. And he can still live here, correct? Or until I decide to finally get him out if he doesn't clean up his act after tomorrow. On page 9, May 30th, 2019, from a contact labeled as Mom, paren, Jorge or George, to 407-716-8684, which I will just refer to as owner in future references. Where is my clippers in the gray box? From owner to Mom, Jorge, all capitals, dumpster, message, like you, separate message, so is your 2 shirts, separate message, no more Rick and Morty.
This message is for everybody who feels like they don't have enough money. There is a real estate investment that I learned about working on.
Contact Mom, Jorge, to owner. Okay. From owner to Mom, Jorge. Lucas cried when he saw the adventure fund was gone. Thank you. No wonder you're out. Fuck off. From owner, he's the one that broke it because you took it. From owner, wanted to go on an adventure. On to page 10. From owner, be proud, feel good. You made my, quote unquote, our son cry. Cheese stick, Lucas, your kids, get the fuck out of my life and my son's. No one, spinster, good, for nothing. Dumpster diver, that's what you are, and the rest of you. Later on the same page, owner to Mom Jorge, get all of you. Mean, selfish, fuck all you. Your firstborn is a joke. Going on to page 11, same date of May 30th, 2019, from owner to Mom Jorge, get the fuck out of my life. Lucas 2, bad influence. From Jorge to owner, I am, as you can see, go drink your life away. From owner to Mom Jorge, your kids are too. Yuck. Shut.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you hear these text messages? This woman, all right, Susie, make sure you do. Do y'all hear these text messages? This woman is completely out of her mind. All right, let me not try to do too much talk. We got a lot to recap because I didn't get a chance to see it all on Friday, but I did catch the verdict. Yay! All right, resume.
Yucks. I only have one. Beaters, your 3 together. Yuck. Going on to page 12, from owner to Mom Jorge, still dated 5/30/2019. Gross, and all the time, gross. Mom Jorge to owner, I love that guy. You're the one who kicked me out. Owner to Jorge, Mom, finally, get your shot together and check me out in 2 to 3 months. Hope you're there. Unless I find someone better. Shit, together. From Mom Jorge to owner, are you serious? Owner to Mom Jorge, that's what happens? No. Mom Jorge to owner, I'm helping out dad right now. Call you in a few. Owner to Mom Jorge, can you help me put out? Fuck off. Jorge, Mom to owner, how? No problem. From 267-216-5170 to owner, damn, you can only talk when you're drunk and talking shit. Owner to the previously mentioned 267 number, stop calling, texting my phone. He's not here anymore. And it's damn. 267 number to owner, NP, you didn't have to be a bitch about it. Owner to 267, Going on to page 30.
I wonder Sarah Boone's ex-mother-in-law. I wonder what kind of crap she had to deal with having her as a daughter-in-law. I'm telling you, Brian Boone got a story. Brian Boone, maybe you should write a story out here and help other men what they was going through. Just a suggestion. But sometimes it's kind of hard for people to, talk about it. It might be hard. Then plus he do have a child with her. All right, back to it, ladies and gentlemen.
13, still May 30th, 2019. Yo, I like you all. He's a dick and the sheriff just left. Sorry I couldn't text back. I'll always respect you all. You know that. He's not here anymore. And yes, I am a bitch. So are you. 267 to owner. Look, I'm not here to be taking shots at you. I never called you a bitch. I said you were acting like one. I'm not going to be here going back and forth on some childish shit. Have a good night. Owner to the 267 number. Friends forever. Thank you. Would love to chat sometime. Call his parents, I guess. Further down on page 13, now on to May 31st, 2019, from owner to mom, Jorge. Tell Jorge to call me. I want my things he took. I have his birth certificate and propane certificate until then if he wants those back. And I have your quote unquote art box. Mom, Jorge to owner, stop being petty. I did not take anything that wasn't mine, I swear. Owner to mom, Jorge, you're a liar. I never can believe you from all the other lies. You stop being petty and take shit like you always do. Another one bites the dust, Jorge. Hope you're miserable like you've made everyone else. Mom, Jorge to owner, I'm not lying. Owner to mom, Jorge, Lucas said he won't miss you either. When I get mine back, you'll get yours. Mom, Jorge to owner, I didn't take it. I'm coming over in a few to get my stuff, and I'm coming with Jean and Melissa. Going on to page 14. Owner to mom, Jorge, go for it. Bring mine, W.
New Jersey, we got a lot of wow to go.
I don't have anything of yours. That's why I'm coming with them so they can bury that. Owner to mom, Jorge, I don't care. They're not going to babysit you because you're an asshole and got kicked out after being taken off the lease. Mom, Jorge to owner, they seen what I had in my hands. Owner to mom, Jorge, still don't care or believe you. I'm going to get Lucas anyway, so don't waste their time or mine. Mom, Jorge to owner, exactly. Owner to mom, Jorge, you were a visitor and a terrible resident, boyfriend too. Just go away unless you bring my stuff. Mom, Jorge to owner, I don't have your shit, Sarah. I need my birth certificate. Owner to mom, Jorge, I don't give a shit either. I worked for that birth certificate, voter's registration, and your ID card. Just because your name is on them doesn't make them yours. Even paid for them. I needed you to be a man and take care of me, not beat me, call me names, and make me feel like I'm not a person. Not giving back until I have mine. Mom, Jorge to owner, whatever, Sarah. Owner to mom, Jorge, next step is restraining order. Know that. You can come over here 100 times. Doesn't mean I have to open the door. Good one, Jorge. Go away. Mom, Jorge to owner, whatever. Owner to mom, Jorge, it's been a great day without you. Will be from now on. Mom, Jorge to owner, you need to do. Owner to mom, Jorge, enjoy living with your parents at 41 with no girlfriend and lonely. It was the inevitable, just like it has been before. Owner to Jorge, mom, did you take Lucas's sunglasses? Mom, Jorge to owner, OMFG, no, I did not. Turning to June 2nd, page 15, 1:10:57 a.m. from owner to mom, Jorge. Jorge, question mark, call me. If Jorge is with you, can you have him call me, please? Text to Mo. (1:18, 16 seconds on June 2nd. Owner to mom, Jorge. I beat you to the punch. Want to do the dartboard with me? Come. Owner to Mo. I know you won't answer, Mo. Tell him to come finish the dartboard with me, please. Owner to Mo. I miss him. Owner to mom, Jorge. Ask Jorge to call me, please, when he gets a minute. June 2nd, 7:43:40 a.m. Can you have Jorge call me, please, when he gets a chance, if he's with you? 7:45 a.m., owner to Mo. Going on to page 16, June 2nd, 2019, 10:50 a.m., 55 seconds, owner to Mo. Hello, can you please have Jorge call me? Willing to give back. Don't know if he's there or at parents. Really want to see him. Owner to Mom Jorge at 10:52, 16 a.m., not pursuing after 12 o'clock, ever again. 12:19 p.m., 23 seconds, owner to Mom Jorge, please call, come over. I'll come get you. Come over, please. I need a super hug. Hugs? Please, need you. 6:23 p.m., owner to Anna. He doesn't live here anymore. Call parents or Mo in response to an incoming phone call that was made at 6:10 p.m., 54 seconds from Anna to owner. Entries 9803, 9804 in the PDF timeline, June 2nd, 2019. Image 0092.heic, capture time 6:33:01 p.m. Image 0093, HEIC, captured 6:33:26 p.m. Publishing from attachments. Image _0092, metadata showing 6/2/2019, 6:33 p.m. And image or IMG _0093, metadata, date taken 6/2/2019, 6:33 p.m. (6:34 p.m., 51 seconds, June 2nd, 2019. Outgoing from owner to Mom Jorge. All up to you now, big boy. And for the record, those images were sent to Mom Jorge at 6:34 p.m., 33 seconds. Look what you made me do. Or maybe your mom will for you. Response from Mom Jorge to owner. Wow, that's really childish. Owner to Mom Jorge, but effective. Mom Jorge to owner. Yeah, I see what you were doing. Did Lucas leave? Owner to Mom Jorge. I'm watching shadows. Be gone for good. Minus birth certificate. Mom Jorge to owner. Okay, cool. Enjoy. Owner to Mom Jorge. Am. Nice. You're not. And nice was from Mom Jorge to owner. Going on to page 17. This is still June 2nd, 2019. Mom Jorge to owner. Yes, I am. You are not, though. Owner to Mom Jorge. To who? Your mom? Brothers? Not me. Mom Jorge to owner. To everyone. Owner to Mom Jorge, but me. Mom Jorge to owner. I love you. Owner to Mom Jorge. I'm going out at 8. Get dressed. I've given you since noon. Peace out, Boy Scout. Mom Jorge to owner. I'm coming over with a handle. I was helping Pop all day cut grass. Owner to Mom Jorge. Getty you. Getting in the shower, then out. Bye-bye. Mom Jorge to owner.
Excuse me, can we approach the bench?
Yes. Objections overruled.
I'm already showered and dressed. Mom Jorge to owner. Hello? Text from Anna to owner. You're rude as hell, but okay. Owner to Anna. Your dad is a POS, but okay. At least you know and will stop calling. Owner to Anna. Futile. Anna to owner. CTFU as you are a piece of shit, but that's God's business, not mine. Have a good day, Coke whore. Since you like to switch it up, I'll do the same. Don't text me back either, fake ass. Page 20 of 108, June 9th, 2019, from owner to Philip. He's off the lease. The process has begun.
You off the lease, huh? This man must have been walking around in eggshells with her. See, these are what these narcs and sociopaths do. When you're in a relationship with them, they will have you walking around with eggshells all day.
Page 22, June 11th, 2019. Metadata only shows to Mom Jorge. You tell your son he's not welcome here, taken off the lease and bound, worthless. Don't show his ugly, fucked up face around here again. Police will be called. Ask him if it was worth it and ride my bike he has. Stay Hispanic, that's what you all are. And he can watch all the porn he wants from the phone Mom gave him. Page 26, June 14th, 2019, 11:38:56 p.m. To Mom Jorge. Wow, congrats, blackouts and boring. We wanted to see him. Hot house, 7 people. Mission to work on my bike. Repeat. Candy Crush. Fuck himself. Shit job. Repeat. Same page, June 15th, 2019, 7:37 p.m., 48 seconds. To Melissa, just an FYI, if my place gets effed up, I'm letting you know. He's in jail. Thanks for the prompts. I'm at my ex's house. Please don't let this reflect on me as a tenant. You said to call cops. I did. He's gone. We're both proud now. I consider you my friend. Melissa, why was he in your apartment? Page 38, notes. Creation time, June 26, 2019, 5:56:57 a.m. 6:14, X videos, 10:03 a.m. Sarah Banks, 5:3 Bank, 6:13. Metro activation, 6:12. Skipping down. X videos, 6:2, 6:13 p.m. X videos, 6:1. X videos, 5:31, 9:56 a. Who's Christine? Friend FB. Going to meet up? Question. Calling her beautiful? Question. Said she thought you were avoiding her when down here. Said no. I was not beautiful. FB-nonchalant Quay. Thanks for adding me. You are exquisite. Facebook messaging Camille, 6:13, 9:42. Facebook or FB Pamela Erickson sending pictures of yourself, telling her good morning, 7:14, 12:13 a.m. FB-Crystal going to woo her, sweep her off her feet, going to change her mind. Luck is my middle name. Sent her pics, kiss emojis, called her beautiful after returning to the convo. Said you had to pick up your brother, sent pics of beer, sent her struts, could have been me, sent her songs but not me, messaged bunny kiss emojis, convo, sent puppy kiss emoji, would love to take her out and see a movie, told her about what we do in the shadows, would love to watch Creed 2 with her, want to snuggle with her and eat popcorn, sent heart-hugging animal emoji, want to play a board game with her, asked to FaceTime call her, called her amazing, messaging at 7:30 a, 6:14, 6:15, 2 days. FB-Crystal liking all her posts, quote, losing someone who doesn't respect or appreciate you is actually a gain, not a loss. You can't compare me to the next girl because there is no competition. I'm one of a kind, and that's real.
You might have a point about that, Sarah. You really are. You are a piece of work. Hmm. Resume.
They're legally robbing you. And it's
Continuing on to page 39, same note. I found everything on your phone, all your messenger texts, telling Christine you want to meet up with her when she's here, calling her beautiful, thanking nonchalant Quay for adding you and calling her exquisite, telling Pamela Erickson good morning and sending pictures at 12:38 a.m., messaging Camille, then the whole 2-day convo with Crystal. How dare you? And send pictures wearing my wedding ring. You're a cheating, lying scumbag. I will never trust you. Why don't you put your mugshot up, or I will, since I have your phone, and log in and tell everyone why you're in jail for the 3rd time. Let them know you beat your wife and she put you there because she couldn't take it anymore. I want nothing to do with you ever again. I've become a different person since you've been gone, with less stress, anxiety, and worry. I feel safe, comfortable, happier with you not here or seeing you at all. I can say through I do have heartbreak after going through your phone. Thank you for always proving me right. I knew when you told me your mom gave you one that you'd be back to your slimy ways. You will never change. I hope it was all worth it, all of it, including losing my debit card for the 3rd time to buy beer and cigarettes, which put you back where you belong. I know for a fact you were not worth any of it. I just can't believe after everything I've done for you, including all I did to get you out of jail, and you do this to me. This is cheating. Goes on to page 40.
See, that's what things with narcissistic people do. Whenever they do something for you, any kind of gifts or any kind of favor, anything they do for you, they always expect like they own you. Like you are entitled to them, like you're supposed to do whatever they want you to do. See how she's saying to him, oh, I got you out of jail and everything. Well, why is he there in the first place? Because of you. Mm. Resume.
Goes on to page 41 and ends with never truly yours. Page 42, June 26th, 2019, 8:06 p.m., 16 seconds. Outgoing from owner to Mo. Just wanted to let you know to tell Jorge I found all his messages, kissy face heart emojis with Crystal and other bitches on FB, along with all his porn after he swore to me he wasn't doing any of that anymore. I'm not doing anything more for him, and he will try and keep him in jail as long as I can. Cheating snake weasel. Ask him all about it or have your parents the next time they talk to him. I'm not anymore. So hurtful after all I've done for him. He can rot in there for all I care. Going on to page 43, to Mo from owner, and I will be there for the hearing next week and his arraignment on both charges. Peace out, fucks, aka Torres. Same page 43, from owner to Mo, 6/26/2019, 9:59:14 p.m. Begins, hi, I was thinking if you could get out, I'd really love it if you'd take me to a movie, or we could snuggle like we do and watch Creed 2, get some popcorn and pretzels, maybe talk about what kind of other movies we like, or find a fun board game to play together. I know your favorite is Avalon. What do you think? I was also thinking the other day about how much I miss you sending me pictures of yourself throughout the day, sending me songs you wanted to hear or thought I'd like. But what I really miss are the kissy love emojis you would send, just because I really miss those, especially the ones with hearts. They'd always make me smile. I knew you were thinking about me. You do Crystal, though. Even asked her to FaceTime. What would you do if you found me having this convo with Ben or John or anyone other than you? I'd be beaten to a bloody pulp. And don't do any of these things anymore, but yet you wear your wedding ring and mine around your neck and tell me how much you love me. But you're telling this woman who looks like TPT you want to snuggle with, take out to a movie, play board games with, questions, sending music, cutesy, kissy love emojis to like you used to me, telling her you want to woo her, sweep her off her feet. How do you think that makes me feel? Why don't you say that to me? Going on through the rest of page 43, page 44, including on page 44, dirty cheat, enjoy your porn and jerking yourself off secretly so your parents don't see you and your ugly new girlfriends.
Do this to build passive income. There's a real estate
Wait to finally be with a real man, Ben, who will and has taken care of me. Can't wait to see what he's like in bed. I already know he kisses. Hope it was all worth it. I'm free. As you told Crystal in your messenger text, you're single with a little cutesy dancing dinosaur. Wow, now you really are. You're despicable. Next text is XOXO from Mo to owner. Page 50, 6/28, 2019, 10:55:47 p.m. from owner to Mo. Just know I can do so much more damage than all of you put together. Know that. Going on to page 51. Try me. Page 72, July 20th, 2019, 11:34 p.m. From Janice to owner. No metadata, but from Janice. Sorry it's so late. I just read your text. He seemed fine when I saw him at your apartment this morning. He answered the door right away, but was quite bummed out that he overslept. But I was okay and told him, no problem, just get ready and come to work in about half an hour. Then I texted your phone and asked if he would rather work the afternoon shift and get some sleep, but he never answered, so I have no idea where he is or what he's doing. What happened last night, he had a black eye. He said it was new because I asked him and I told him to put makeup on it. He said he had that taken care of. Did you two get in it again? He acted like when I told him he had a black guy, at first he didn't know what I was talking about. I guess he kind of blacked out. You can call me back if you want. 11:30 p.m., 38 seconds. From owner to mom, Jorge. Janice just called me looking for Jorge and she's pissed. Congrats. Page 82, 8/21, August 21st, 2019. From Jorge to owner. I love you, my friend, my love, my queen, my everything.
I agree with you too. They came right back. They was quick. They already had their decision. I believe day 5 really, yeah, because this is day 6. Friday was day 6. So I believe day 5, ooh, after watching that, there was no way they was gonna say, there was no way they were gonna say innocent. It's just not gonna happen. She clearly doesn't excel at anything. She clearly doesn't excel at everything. They showed her grace with a plea deal, but no, sorry, I'll stop. Mm-mm-mm. All right, let's get back to these text messages. Wow. And after text messages, we're going to get into the closing arguments and then the verdict. Yes, we got another narco off the street.
And that concludes everything I'm going to publish to the jury on this exhibit.
Okay.
Judge, will we report today?
Yes.
So for about the last, 35 minutes, Assistant State Attorney Will J. has
Okay, now I'm gonna fast forward. I'm gonna get into the closing arguments. So give me a second so I can get the time spot for that. What was
We need to tell you about Beth's IUD. Beth got
it? Okay, I think this is it. We're gonna get into the closing arguments now.
Closing argument. Both the state and the defendant have now rested their case. The attorneys now will present their final arguments. Please remember that what the attorneys say is not evidence or your instruction on the law. However, do listen closely to their arguments. They are intended to aid you in understanding the case. Each side will have equal time, but the state is entitled to divide this time between an opening argument and a rebuttal argument after the defense has given its closing argument. With that, state, you may proceed.
I agree with you. Oh yeah, she was just basically making a fool of George. She humiliated him every day. Probably made fun of his size, his height, everything about him. All he wanted was love, to have a good job, to support his family. That's all. That was it. All right, let's get back to it.
This is a box. This is the box where Jorge Torres was killed. It's a small box, 28 by 20 by 8 7/8 inches. Jorge Torres was zipped up in this box. Jorge Torres.
All right, Susie Q, we'll let prosecution tell you. Let them tell you. We hear what they say because I didn't get a chance to hear prosecution myself. I didn't hear none of the closing, so this is my first time watching with y'all. All right, resume. But basically, having a couple of cocktails and everything, and she throws Q all probably like, get in the suitcase. He get in the suitcase, and then we know the rest. All right, resume.
Took his last panicked breaths in this box. The medical examiner explained to us that with each breath Jorge Torres took in, there was less oxygen in this box. Jorge Torres was murdered in this box. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, my trial partner, we thank you for your time and attention in this most important of trials. We now have the law from the judge in this case. This is what our duty is to follow. And let's have a discussion regarding that law that we've just been read and given. The first section of note you're going to come to is called Introduction to Homicide. But this being a legal document written by a bunch of lawyers who you've seen for the last 2 weeks arguing with each other, pay careful attention to ands and ors. Remember, if an and is somewhere, we're going to need both things or all the things, and if an or is there, then only one of those things we're going to need. So as we start out here on Introduction to Homicide, we come to the first section on justifiable homicide. And it reads, killing of a human being is justifiable homicide and lawful if necessarily done while resisting an attempt to murder or commit a felony upon the defendant, or to commit a felony in any dwelling house in which the defendant was at the time. Ladies and gentlemen, this section is completely inapplicable. It's inapplicable because Jorge Torres was zipped up in that suitcase. He couldn't commit or attempt to commit a murder on anybody. He couldn't even scratch his own head while he was in that suitcase. Next, we turn to excusable homicide. Here we have several paragraphs, and it reads, the killing of a human being is excusable and therefore lawful under any one of the following 3 circumstances. When the killing is committed by accident and in misfortune, doing any lawful act by lawful means, with usual ordinary caution and without any unlawful intent. Well, the problem in this circumstance for the defendant is that she took the law into her own hands. Her testimony was that when Jorge Torres was in here, he was laughing and giggling and they were joking. And then he started to complain that he couldn't breathe. And that's when she said that she wanted him to stay in there so he could feel uncomfortable. So he could feel her grievances. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not lawful. That is not the use of ordinary caution. And that is not applicable in this circumstance. Second, when the killing occurs by accident or misfortune in the heat of passion upon any sudden and sufficient provocation. Jorge Torres couldn't provoke anything from his circumstance. Jorge Torres was confined to this box. Next, when the killing is committed by accident and misfortune resulting from a sudden combat, a dangerous weapon is not used, the killing is not done in a cruel and unusual manner. Well, this fails on 2 counts. There was no sudden combat. In her words, this was laughing and joking and we're all having fun, but she decides that it's going to get a little extra real for Jorge Torres. And it fails on the 2nd count because Jorge Torres was killed in a cruel and unusual manner. Next, we turn to our main charge of 2nd-degree murder. The law informs us that to prove the crime of 2nd-degree murder, the state must prove the following 3 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. I think it's important to stop right here. This sentence right here is telling us what has to be proven in order for the crime of 2nd-degree murder to be for the defendant to be found guilty in this case. We've been hearing all kinds of facts for almost 2 weeks now of trial, but these are the 3 facts that had to have been met by the reasonable doubt standard in order to be found guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that the state has proven second-degree murder beyond all doubt. And the proof of that guilt is overwhelming. But I will cite for each element one fact that conclusively proves each of those elements beyond all doubt. As to the first fact, that George Torres is dead, well, we have stipulation, amongst other things, that agrees to that. As to the second fact, the death was caused by Sarah Boone. Sarah Boone, in her own words, from the time that this case began on February 23rd, 2020, to when she took the witness stand a few days ago, was consistent.
Susie and Reigning Woman. This is Sarah Boone's first husband. Well, only husband she had. They divorced now. But that's the first husband. Just wanted to show you a picture just in case you don't know what it is. All right, reason. His name is Brian Boone.
Consistent about one statement. She zipped him up. She didn't zip him out. She zipped him up in the suitcase, and she refused to zip him out. 3, there was an unlawful killing of George Torres by an act imminently dangerous to another in demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. The law goes on to define for us what a depraved mind is, and also what an act is. And it's going to tell us that an act includes any series of related actions arising from and performed pursuant to a single design or purpose. An act is imminently dangerous to another in demonstrating a depraved mind if it is an act or a series of acts that, one, a person of ordinary judgment would know is reasonably certain to kill or do serious bodily harm to another, and is done from ill will, hatred, spite, or an evil intent, and is of such a nature that the act itself displays the difference in human life. Ladies and gentlemen, her conduct fits every one of those things. And if there was a scintilla of doubt that this was not the actions of a depraved mind, I point to you, ING 1062, and states 17. Mr. J, may you publish states 17?
Susie Q and Reigning Woman. Now you're gonna see. I'm assuming they're gonna show the video, but you'll see this is what she did to her boyfriend. She put him in a suitcase. Susie Q. You see this? She put him in a suitcase, and he said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe," and she didn't care. She left him there, and she was so drunk that she went upstairs and passed out, and then woke up in the morning. Oh, he's purple. He's purple. No remorse.
For everything you've done to me. For everything you've done to me. Fuck you. Fuck you. Stupid. That's my name. Don't wear it out.
I can't fucking breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do me, shake me.
Yep, Susie Q, I know. You trying to understand what is this you watching? Yeah, I know. She put him in the suitcase. He didn't get in there on his own. They just having some drinks. Probably thought it was funny. She just basically raining woman. See, this is what these narcissistic people do. She wanted to humiliate him, and she thought it was cute. Oh, she probably like, oh, let's get in the suitcase. You so tired. Let's get. Oh, okay. Anything to please her, to entertain her, to make her happy. Evil woman, evil. And then a nerve of her to sit there in the courtroom and talk this crap in front of his family. His family's heartbroken. The mother, he looked just like his mother, raining woman, looked just like his mother. She had to sit there and see her son like that suffering, begging to get out, and she don't care. But you know what, Susan Q and raining woman? If she didn't videotape, I hate to say it, she might have would have got away with this, unfortunately. Resume. This is the scene. That's the mother. You see raining woman Susie? That's the mother. She can't take. Oh gosh, I feel like crying. Oh my gosh. She only did this. I'm telling y'all. The only reason why Psycho Sarah did this, because she did this just to humiliate. Because listen to the text messages. She's like, ha ha, I killed your little favorite boy. Your favorite boy. He's not here no more. She enjoying it. Evil. I know, Susie, can't you?
Upset members there of George Torres' family walking out after the prosecution shows that suitcase video that was recorded on Sarah Boone's cell phone.
Well, what the heck could you be possibly writing right now, Sarah? What could you be writing? What? What could you be writing? All right, Melly says something. Did you catch the motion by defense for a mistrial because George mom broke? That's what I was hearing too. I'm kind of like watching this with y'all, Melanie. Only thing I did catch was the verdict, but I guess it's gonna happen now because I'm gonna play the thing, the nerve, right, Melanie? The nerve. Just look at her. What could you be writing? Hey, psycho. Knock knock. Anybody there?
You may continue.
Sarah. Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe it.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real ransom. Now you want to give it for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real ransom.
Sarah, I can't breathe it.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you drink on me.
Sarah.
Fuck you.
I can't breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the fuck up.
Ladies and gentlemen, that exhibit removes any scintilla of doubt about the depravity of the defendant's actions. But we know from the evidence that this was not the first time she had considered killing Jorge Torres. We know from the evidence that on January 13, 2020, approximately 1 month prior to Jorge Torres' murder, the defendant had a text message conversation.
Susie, this is just like out of a Hitchcock movie, right? It's like one of those Hitchcock thriller movies. Can't believe someone would do something like this. Resume.
Conversation. Please do something with yourself, Sarah. God bless you. And bless you and all of you too. I'll get rid of him. Then I'll be better. Torres. But ladies and gentlemen, in this case, the law actually specifically tells us that the intent to cause death is not necessary. In order to convict a second-degree murder, it is not necessary for the state to prove the defendant had an intent to cause death. Next, we turn. I'm going to bypass the lesser included offenses because though she is guilty of those offenses as well, the law instructs us that she is to be convicted of for the highest offense in which the evidence supports, which is second-degree murder in this case. So turning our attention towards voluntary intoxication. If there was any question about the fact that Sarah imbibed alcohol on the night that Jorge Torres was murdered, and that maybe somehow that would excuse the conduct, or be some type of defense for the conduct. Well, this tells us that that's not the case. Voluntary intoxication resulting from the use of alcohol is not a defense to a crime. Evidence of a defendant's voluntary intoxication may not be taken into consideration to show that she lacked the specific intent to commit any crime. A person is voluntarily intoxicated if he or she knowingly consumed a substance that he or she knew or should have known could cause intoxication. Voluntary intoxication is not a defense to second-degree murder, manslaughter, or culpable negligence. Ladies and gentlemen, there's ample evidence of the defendant's intoxication from watching her on the public surveillance, buying the bottles of wine with Jorge Torres, to her admissions to drinking, to her voice that we heard on the video while she was torturing Jorge Torres. Next, we come to defenses. First, we come to the justifiable use of deadly force. It tells us it is a defense to the crimes of second-degree murder, manslaughter, and culpable negligence if the actions of Sarah Boone were justifiable use or threatened use of deadly force. Sarah Boone does not have the burden of proving that she was justified in using deadly force. Instead, for you to find Sarah Boone guilty, the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Sarah Boone was not justified in using deadly force. The law on the justifiable use of deadly force is as follows. Sarah Boone was justified in using deadly force if she reasonably believed that such force or threat of force was necessary to prevent the imminent death or great bodily harm to herself. Sarah Boone had no duty to retreat. Ladies and gentlemen, in a few moments, Mr. Owens will rise. And he is going to show you this. And this. And this. And he's going to talk, and this as well, about the list of grievances that Sarah Boone had for George Torres. He's going to talk to you about curtain rods. He's going to talk to you about black eyes.
Excuse me, but I'm looking at this guy from prosecution. Well, how much do you bench press? Look at those arms and that chest. Lord have mercy. Well, he killing it too, himself. All right, resume.
He's going to talk to you about what an awful, awful boyfriend George Torres was. And ladies and gentlemen, at the end of all of that, it still will not change the fact that the defendant is not entitled to the justifiable use of deadly force. Because
Yeah, Susie Q. I'm trying to focus on what this man is saying, and I'm just looking at him like, well, Dad, well, how much do you lift? How often you go to the gym? You take down your protein and water. That's what I'm talking about. All right, let's resume.
as we continue to read this instruction, it tells us, in deciding whether Sarah Boone was justified in using the use of deadly force, you must consider the circumstances at the time the force or the threat of force was used. Danger need not have been actual. However, to justify the use of deadly force, the appearance of imminent danger must have been so real that Sarah Boone actually believed that deadly force was necessary. Moreover, to justify the use of deadly force, and this is important, a reasonably cautious and prudent person under the same circumstances would have believed the use of deadly force was necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, no reasonably prudent and cautious person would believe that a man who could barely fit into this box, who was incapable of movement, who was begging for his life, who was slowly asphyxiating, suffocating with each breath, would have needed to use deadly force against him. The justifiable use of deadly force utterly fails, utterly crashes like a house of cards. But there's more. However, the use of deadly force is not justified if you find that Sarah Boone used force to initially provoke threatened use of force against herself. Let's stop there before we consider the next two paragraphs. Some of the most critical testimony in this trial is her testimony on the stand. It was a great day. We were doing puzzles and artwork, dancing with the dogs, listening to music. Tag, you're it, hide and go seek time. George gets into the suitcase. She comes and zips him up. But we're still laughing about it. We're still laughing after he's zipped up in the suitcase. And then that's when George had the temerity to ask, George Torres had the temerity to ask to be unzipped from the suitcase. And that's when Sarah Boone decided he needed to suffer. She was the initial aggressor, ladies and gentlemen. She provoked the use of force in this case. In her own words, we were laughing and playing right before he wanted to be let out because he couldn't breathe. Paragraph 1. The threat of force asserted toward the defendant was so great that she reasonably believed that she was in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm and had exhausted every reasonable means to escape the danger.
Ladies, vote,
other
vote,
than
vote,
using
vote,
deadly
vote.
force on Jorge Torres. He couldn't exert anything, ladies and gentlemen. Jorge Torres couldn't even exert his arm out of the suitcase. How on earth could he have exerted a force so great?
I'm trying to focus, Rain Woman. It's kind of hard. I keep looking at this. God. Oh, boy. Reason. I know he got a happy wife. His wife is very happy.
To justify his Judge object.
Approach.
An objection from the defense attorney there as the prosecution delivered his closing argument. I would imagine it was about the comment over George not being able to get his arm out that we just heard Mr. Cacciatore make. It's been an emotional closing argument so far for the prosecution, and specifically for the family members of Jorge Torres who are inside the courtroom or were inside the courtroom when the prosecution showed that suitcase video again. Looks like that sidebar has wrapped up, and we'll see the judge's response to that objection.
Objection overruled.
This is of no help to the defendant. Second paragraph. In good faith, Sarah Boone withdrew from physical contact with Jorge Torres and clearly indicated to Jorge Torres that she wanted to withdraw and stop the use of deadly force, but Jorge Torres continued or resumed threatened use of deadly force. Ladies and gentlemen, Jorge Torres never got a chance to do anything. Jorge Torres never was able to mount any aggression towards the defendant. Therefore, this paragraph is inapplicable.
I see you, Marlene. Marlene, we doing a vote over here. The ladies is voting on this guy. So make sure you put your vote in, okay? Put your vote in. All right, resume.
And the law tells us as well that physical contact in this case includes any restraint on Jorge Torres's movements. The law also tells us, again, you find that Sarah Boone, because of prior threats or difficulties with Jorge Torres, had reasonable grounds to believe that she was in danger of great bodily harm, of death or great bodily harm.
Yeah, there's no
at the hands of
makeup
Jorge
on how
Torres.
it really look like.
You may consider this fact in determining whether the actions of Sarah Boone were reasonable. Now, we're going to get to battered spouse syndrome in a moment. But again, I submit to you, this will be the opportunity for the defense to air grievances in regards to Jorge Torres. But again, those grievances will not change the law, and they will not change the fact that justifiable use of deadly force fails as a defense for the defendant. If you find that at the time of the alleged second-degree murder, manslaughter, culpable negligence, Sarah Boone knew that Jorge Torres had committed an act or acts of violence, you may consider that fact in determining whether Sarah Boone reasonably believed it was necessary for her to use deadly force. Considering the issue of deadly force, you may take into account the relative physical abilities and capacities of Sarah Boone and George Torres. Now we come to the special instruction on battered spouse. You have heard evidence that Sarah Boone suffers from battered spouse syndrome. If you find Sarah Boone suffered from battered spouse syndrome credible, you may consider this evidence to assist you in determining whether, in Sarah Boone's circumstances, would reasonably believe that such force was necessary to defend herself against the imminent use of unlawful force by George Torres. Like other witnesses, you may believe or disbelieve all or any part of the testimony in regards to battered spouse. Ladies and gentlemen, we heard from 3 experts in the areas of battered spouse in this case. And I think at the outset, it's important to note what battered spouse is and isn't and what the law instructs us here. Battered spouse is not some carte blanche. Battered spouse is not a license to kill. The fact that George Torres, at points, mistreated Sarah Boone, did things that were worthy enough to get him arrested, to get restraining orders placed upon him, doesn't mean that she walks around with an ace in her pocket when it comes to George Torres.
You know what I noticed in my coaching, that I've been coaching people, and especially when I coach men that has dealt with narcissistic women, one thing they always say, there was a situation that she threatened or she did call the cops on them. That's what they love to do. They love to call the cops and get you arrested. Men, watch out for these women, and ladies too. Watch out for the narcissistic men. But it's very important. That's why I'm saying my challenge is all about date smart, not thirsty. Because when you're thirsty, these type of people, these evil, sick, demented people will always be right around the corner. And they'll act like they so much care about you. They understand you. They got you and everything. Yeah, okay. Then later on, you will see the mask. You'll see that you start seeing cracks in the mask, and eventually the mask will fall off. Reason.
It doesn't mean that because he did these awful, bad things, that now, through the rest of time, she's a battered spouse, and she just has the right to kill him, or to make him suffer, or to punish him, or to make him feel uncomfortable, or decide that he needs to be confined to a box. No. What the battered spouse syndrome instruction does, it talks about the imminency of fear. And when we heard about that testimony, we heard about it from Dr. Harper, and we heard about it from Dr. Brannon for the defense. And some of the testimony was a little difficult to understand at points, but there was one point in Dr. Brannon's testimony that was very critical. Dr. Brannon talked about rule-outs. He talked about the fact that when emotions and emotional reactions are involved, like trauma and trauma-based disorders, other possibilities have to be ruled out before we can even ascribe those actions to battered spouse syndrome. Other possibilities, according to Dr. Brannon, include alcohol abuse. Dr. Harper should have listened to Dr. Brannon's testimony, because Dr. Brannon completely undercut Dr. Harper's testimony. Dr. Harper relied heavily on the words of the defendant, who was abusing alcohol at the time of these events. And then you
Thank you, Abby, for those sweet, kind words. Thank you. And I'm glad to have you a part of this channel, too. Glad to have you. And make sure ladies get your vote in.
heard from the expert for the state, Tanya Warner. In her opinion, was much more straightforward. Remember, Dr. Brandon did not render an opinion as to whether or not she suffered from battered spouse. Dr. Warner said affirmatively, yes, I believe she did suffer from battered spouse syndrome. But she also applied what Dr. Brandon was talking about. Other possibilities have to be ruled out as the trigger for a behavior, for an event. So in Dr. Warner's estimation, the fact that at the time of this incident, they were laughing and joking and carrying on meant that the trigger was not domestic violence or some threat. In the defendant's own words, the trigger was him wanting to get out and her being reminded of the bad things that he had done to her. That's not imminence of fear. That's a reminder of bad things a person has done. And again, even if you were to believe that she was battered spouse triggered at the time of this event, it still does not save the day. Because all the battered spouse trigger law tells us is that it goes to that imminency requirement. It doesn't say there's no imminency requirement. It doesn't say that, look, if you're suffering from battered spouse and you're triggered by battered spouse, then, hey, there's no more imminency requirement, do as you wish. It just gives the ladies and gentlemen of the jury another thing to consider in determining whether or not that threat was imminent. And we know from the evidence, we know from the videos, there was absolutely no threat. And we know there was no threat because Jorge Torres never got out of that box. He was never got out of that box until sometime on the early afternoon of February 24th. Mr. J, can you please publish from stage 21?
Marlene, and who else? Rainy Woman and Susie Q. I don't think y'all really know, everything that's happening here. Now, we watching this clip. Now, in this clip, it's her coaching him what to say, I guess, into court. Because when she had him, when he got arrested, and how she's such a great person. Listen to how she's making her man, telling him what to say and what to do. Oh, wait a minute. Did I mess up? Oh, okay. All right, resume.
I'm gonna go to court and I'm gonna tell the judge, listen, my fiance has nothing to do with this. It's all my fault. We were both taken and got in an isolated situation that has never happened before. I love my fiance. She's a good woman. For being in trouble in her life, she has a 7-year-old son that she loves and cherishes.
A blind Boston Terrier.
She has 2 dogs. One is blind, one is deaf. She goes around and she's driving and sees an animal that's injured. She'll stop in the middle of the street, no matter what kind of traffic it is, just to make sure that that animal doesn't get injured any more than where it already has. We both love each other, we both live together. Yes, every relationship has their arguments, but we are not the type of people that you guys are portraying us to be.
She especially.
Especially her. So please, if you can,
Dismiss.
dismiss this case,
Closed.
drop it. She is not the type of person.
Good person.
Great person.
Angel.
I know she'd be an angel. She's close to it.
Best thing that has ever happened to you.
Yes, ma'am. And I love you to death. And I hate that we're going through this right now.
You heard the words he said. I love you to death, and I hate that we're going through this. He meant that. He really loved this woman. He loved her with his whole heart. He would have did anything for her. And all she did was used and abused it. Knowing he was broken at that time when she got with him. You know, he was broken and wow. It's so sad. Abby said, this sounds like she is good to dogs, not him, not men. Mm-hmm. Evil woman. All right, resume. People that's coming in, make sure you please hit the like. And ladies, make sure you put your vote in. Resume.
On it.
What?
And it did.
Because I love you. Whatever you want to say. God will prevail, and He will take us out of this situation. Love you.
Clearly, George Torres is dominating the defendant. Clearly, George Torres is the one telling the defendant what to do. Clearly, George Torres is the one calling the shots at 4748 France Lane. Ladies and gentlemen, are we so sure that George Torres wasn't the person suffering from battered spouse syndrome? Next, we're going to come to the justifiable use of non-deadly force. The language and the arguments are pretty close to what we've already heard in the deadly force instruction, including the key language that it requires a reasonably cautious and prudent person under the same circumstances would have believed that the use of non-deadly force was necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that this was not a case of non-deadly force. George Torres lost his life as a result of these actions. We have heard the testimony of Dr. Sarah Zadovich, who described his cause and manner of death, who described the mechanism of death, how that oxygen dissipated in that suitcase. And when we also look at the imminency, we heard in opening statements by Mr. Owens that, the big threat in this case, the awful threat, was in the magic 9 minutes between the video at 11:12 that she took, torturing George Torres, to her follow-up video at 11:23, after she had moved the suitcase. Mr. J, you published from States 17, IMG 1063.
Sir.
It was a short video. Well, what's one of the things that we notice by this point? You can hear how loud George's voice is on the 11-12 video. But now, roughly 11 minutes later, from the time that that started, you see that the makeshift coffin that he's in has been moved. And his voice now is softer. The life is draining from George Torres, and it's evident in that video. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is evidence that there was no threat in the magic 9 minutes that was not recorded. There was only George Torres in this box, slowly being killed. Next, we come to weighing the evidence. This instruction tells us it is up to you to decide what evidence is reliable. You should use your common sense in deciding which is the best evidence and which evidence should not be relied upon in considering your verdict. You may find some of the evidence not reliable or less reliable than other evidence. You should consider how the witness acted as well as what they said. Some things you should consider. Did the witness have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? In focusing on the defendant, absolutely. Two people walked through the front door on the evening of February 23rd, 2020 at 4748 France Court. George Torres and Sarah Boone. But only Sarah Boone ever walked out of that front door alive. Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? This is an emphatic no. And the litany of her intoxication in versions of events is evidence of that. Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? I would submit to you she wasn't. 4, did the witness have some interest in how the case should be decided? Clearly. Does the witness's testimony agree with the other testimony and other evidence in the case? And I would say largely no. Because on the issue of whether or not George Torres could have threatened her the way she says that he did, the answer is clearly no, and we know that from the forensic data. We know that from the items itself. Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court? In regards to the defendant, it's almost more appropriate to ask about the time she did make a consistent statement. You listen to her version of events on the 911 call, on the body cameras, on her first interviews with law enforcement, and then you hear her in her next interview the next day with Detective Copsall and Detective Lowen, and more details come out, things change. First, she was never intoxicated, then she was intoxicated. Then there's just the whole fact of she omits the fact of, oh yeah, he was actually trying to attack me. Oh yeah, I was in fear for my life. When she said at every turn, no, it was just a great day. We were having fun. Oh my God, I can't believe this. We were doing good. The only stress we had was about jobs. And now, 4.5 years after the fact, it's time to come up with a new story. But ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that the truth does not change. The facts do not change. The videos do not change. And on any version of events that the defendant has given, they all add up to the fact that there is absolutely no doubt that she is guilty of murder. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, do you have any doubt about the defendant's guilt when she described using that baseball bat to hit Jorge Torres's fingers back in the suitcase when he attempted to save his life? Do you have any doubt when she is given how many versions of events in this case? Do you have any doubt after hearing the testimony of her neighbors about the loud crash?
He loved her so much. If, let's say, she would have took him out the suitcase and he would have been sick, had to go to the hospital or something, he still would have forgave her. He would have forgave her and still loved her and would have been with her. So sad.
And arguing that night, do you have any doubt after hearing the testimony of Dr. Sarah Zadovich? Do you have any doubt after watching the videos of Jorge Torres being murdered and her laughing about it and talking about the fact that he cheated on her? Do you have any doubt after reading the text messages from her phone, after seeing the videos of how she controlled and manipulated Jorge Torres? And if you say, Mr. Cacciatore, I still have a doubt, well, then the law asks you, is that doubt to an element? And is that doubt a mere possible doubt, a speculative, an imaginary, or a forced doubt? I submit to you the idea that she had to do this because she was a battered spouse is an imaginary doubt. It's a doubt born from the imagination of Sarah Boone. It is not a reasonable doubt. But if you find yourself back in that deliberation room and you are just trying to think of some way in which the defendant is not guilty, just searching, struggling for that way, that also is not a reasonable doubt, ladies and gentlemen. That is a forced doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident that when you read the entirety of those jury instructions and apply the law to the facts that came out in this case, that you are going to come back with the only lawful verdict, which is guilty as charged, second-degree murder. Thank you.
Members of the jury, it is 4:04. As I promised, we were going to take that afternoon break before the defense proceeds with their closing argument. You're going to leave everything behind. Similar instruction that I've given you before. Please don't conduct any independent investigation, research as to the person, places, thing, or charge involved in this case. You do not have any discussions among yourselves or anyone else. We'll bring it back in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
All rise. Jury exit.
All right, just give me a second. I'm getting ready to go to defense. Hold it just a second. Hey man. Hey man. Defense closing arguments. Prosecution 624. Defense.
State, you recognize our jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, you recognize our jury. Thank you. Y'all may be seated.
Jury back in the courtroom, and
Sir, for one of
closing
the last
arguments
times,
getting
if you
ready
could please raise your hands to confirm that you complied with the court's instructions. All hands have been raised. Members of the jury, at this time, the defense is going to proceed with their closing argument, similar to the state's closing argument. These are not evidence. These are just arguments, and I ask you to pay attention to them. Thank you. Mr. Owens, you may proceed, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Y'all know me, I'm James Owens, along with Tony Henderson and the girls. We're all from Milton. I think y'all figured that out, that we were from out of town. Santa Rosa County, it's northwest Florida, close to Pensacola. And my buddy Kevin Beck, he's a longtime friend, he's from New Mexico. The team, the defense team, is here, and we're here to represent this area.
You caught that, Susie, right? He was broken, low self-esteem. He thought he couldn't do better. And she probably would kept drilling that crap in his head every day, just chipping his self-esteem away, just chipping it away, and had him believing that too. Sad. All right, let's hear what defense have to say. Grasping for straws, aren't we? Ha 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 ha.
And we feel confident that we're going to be able to show you why she's not guilty. Okay? Now I'm going to take my time. I've got some notes. I'm not the most organized person in the world. I've got some exhibits that we're going to show you. And then we got a couple of videos at the end. Okay? And we're going to try our best to help you make the right decision. Okay? But yeah, Milton's a small town.
Objection. Providence.
Overruled.
See how small it is. 7 miles away is another small town called Pace. In between that is a Walmart. It's a very small town. We didn't know what to expect coming down here to Orlando. Judge, I'm allowed to.
I'll give you a little bit more for intro, but then we need to get into it.
I'm going to get into it. I wanted to say it's a small town, good people. We've been down here 3 weeks. We didn't know what to expect. We've been surprised.
Objection. Improper argument.
Mr. Owens, approach.
I know you're desperate, James Owen. You're desperate.
Safe to say, I think James Owens is not too happy with the objection there from the prosecution, multiple objections into the beginning of his closing arguments there. And as you heard him say, he is going to, he's got a lot to cover. So it sounds like this will be a bit of a lengthy closing argument, and we'll see where things go from here.
Objections overruled.
All I wanted to say is just since we've been here, we've been treated with respect and hospitality, and just like we've been helped. We appreciate that. Now, I'm going to do some reading, and then I'm going to do some talking. But ultimately, this is about justifiable use of force. That is a legal defense in Florida. We as citizens, the law is designed to protect us from defending ourselves, to protect us from potential attack. And you are the only ones, in this case, because Sarah Vin was arrested, that's going to be able to look at it critically and objectively. Objectively. Not like the state attorney.
Objection. Improper argument.
Overruled.
Objectively. And the law in Florida gives you all the power and authority to do that. The state attorney can't make the decision. They can't make the decision. They can try to influence you. And we're going to talk about some of the things they did here in this trial and some of the things they said.
Objection. Any motion?
Yes.
More objections there from the prosecution as James Owens continues his closing statement here in the trial. Seems to already be frustrated by those multiple objections coming from the prosecutor's table. You see Sarah Boone chatting there at the defendant's table with another member of the legal team there.
I was watching somebody's commentary. I don't know how true it is, but I think it is probably true. One of the ladies that's helping is one of the lawyers on the defense, their daughter. I think she's in college and she's doing her intern here. Interesting, but I don't know which woman is it. I don't know.
Kind of tactic there, because that is certainly what we have seen so far in the 6 or 7 minutes that this closing argument has been going on so far. Correction there. One was for relevance. I believe that was the first objection, Johnny. The first or second one was for relevance. The rest for improper argument.
I think you will find from considering the evidence in this case that there is no doubt that Sarah Boone is a Newton. That Sarah Boone has.
Oh, it's the black attorney. It's him. Okay, the other cutie with the baldy. Okay, so it's his daughter. Oh, that is so cool to see the daughter with the dad like that. See, I love it. I love it. I love it. Resume.
Has been traumatized. That Sarah Boone is still traumatized. And the reason for the trauma is Jorge Torres. The reason for the trauma is Jorge Torres. From the positive things about the man that we've seen on video to the positive things Sarah Boone has testified about, to the violent monster he becomes. And I mean monster, because it was repeatedly. And what happens the next day? Man, I don't remember. I was drunk. I don't remember. That's the gaslight that this young woman, vulnerable woman with nobody, just starving for love, starving for attention, and seeing the good in the man. And it was good. But every day was on the balance. She measured every day, depending on how it started and then how it ended. And that's the way she had to live her life, day in and day out, day in and day out. Dr. Harper and Dr. Brandon talked about trauma. Dr. Harper spoke of the veterans that she had treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if you remember her testimony, but she spoke about some of the veterans that had been in the war in Iraq, and people in war a lot of times get post-traumatic stress. It used to be called shell shock and other things. But people in wartime, or police officers will get post-traumatic stress. And a lot of them come in, the males come in with this bravado, I'm all right. I'm all right. And so That's why Dr. Harper was talking about the veterans. That's what they'll do. But you got to spend time with them. It just can't be one session. And you've got to run post-traumatic stress testing, which tells whether they really have post-traumatic stress. And we all probably have experienced some trauma. All of us have lost some loved ones. And it's awful. You're in shock. You can't believe it. It's disbelief. You don't sleep for days. And eventually, you have to go back to work. You take a week off. Life has to go on. Life has to go on. You go back to work. Kids are in school. You get a little time, right? Time heals, right? These veterans that come back from a deployment, they get back. They get some semblance of normalcy. It may or may not get some treatment, but time helps. Time heals. Everybody, it helps. Just time. Overcoming a divorce, overcoming a death, whatever trauma. Sarah Boone had no break. No break. Learned helplessness. Just giving up. Just giving up. I can't get out of this situation. They broke up. She go about 2 days. Texting, calling. Just learned helplessness. And it's, in the manual. That spouse syndrome is not. But what did you hear Dr. Harper say? She suffers from post-traumatic stress. That is a mental disorder. You are actually undergoing the psychological effects of post-traumatic stress. You're not in your right mind. And it's repeating itself. It's repeating itself again and again, day in and day out. And when you look at this law, that's what you have to apply. Someone in Sarah Boone's shoes, when you're deciding whether her conduct was reasonable. Got a bunch of notes. Not that, it was something I wanted to read. Where did I put it? Sarah Boone's long-term exposure to abuse created a state of learned helplessness and diminished her capacity to assess risk, especially in moments of heightened stress. The cyclical nature of this violence, the tension building, the battering, the contrition phases, caused Sarah to be trapped psychologically in that relationship. Due to this clear abuse, Sarah Boone had a reasonable belief of imminent harm under her state of mind. Jorge Torres had a history of violence against Sarah, and as a result, Sarah Boone's actions were the result of fear conditioned by abuse he endured over time. The cumulative effects of long-term abuse, as we saw her behavior on the 2-minute suitcase video, is a trauma response. Sarah Boone acted out of a sense of preservation. While tragic, it was not driven by malice, but a mind ravaged.
I know I keep pausing and everything, but I wanted to address this. Susie said, I heard that she was offered a plea deal 15 years. Yep, she was offered 15 years. And matter of fact, she'd been in jail for a minute, so she had time served. So that lets me know she doesn't really think too much about her son, because she would have been able to be home to her son at the age of, what they said, about 52, 53, something like that or whatever. She could have been home with her son. But she said no. You know why she said no? I finally figured out why this heifer decided she wanted to go to trial. It's because she wanted to still humiliate and degrade Jorge Torres, even though he's unalive. That's why. And she wanted to rub it in his family's face. She wanted to hurt them because she knew they was going to come to court and all this kind of stuff and everything. That's what she wanted, because you heard those text messages. So let me know she gunning for his family. And another thing, I think she was jealous of his family because he had a big family. He had a loving family that loved him. He had a wife before, and he had children that loved him. And I think she was extremely jealous of that. Jealous of it. Because if I'm correct, both of her parents are deceased, right? I believe one brother, I could be wrong, stand to be correct. Anybody's watching replay, please, put in the comment section, correct me, let me know. I believe one brother's in the military, and I think another one is deceased or something like that. I could be wrong or whatever, but she's basically by herself. So it's just her and her husband. But her husband, they broke up. Yep. I think she was so jealous of him because narcissistic people are so jealous when they see people are happy, have a loving home. Yeah, true psychopath. I don't know why. I think they should really evaluate her a little bit more. Oh, yeah, I think a little bit more. The other brother's in jail. Oh, okay, so she got one in jail and one in the military. So basically she by herself. And probably the one in the military is probably the normal one out the kids. So he don't want to be bothered with him. He just want to keep his distance. Don't blame him. All right, let's resume. All right, Boo, back to you, defense. We hear what you got to say. Let's hear what you have to say.
Ravaged by abuse. Now I'm going to ask you to try to understand. Try to understand. Sarah Boone being emotionally and psychologically broken. These actions may have been misguided attempts at survival, but not murder. Imminent danger, her response reacted to that belief. It's somebody suffering from the long-term psychological effects of domestic violence. Who spent a lot of time? Dr. Brandon, you remember him. He was the first expert on trauma. Took some notes. Kevin Beck, you remember, did the direct examination of Dr. Brandon.
Lovejoy, there's another trial I want to cover. Courtney Clenny, the OnlyFans woman that stabbed her boyfriend. Oh, she's no different. They both just alike. I want to do a comparison between them two. Both of them with these boyfriends and using and abusing them and treating them like crap. And all these guys is doing is worshiping these women. Yeah, I did some commentary on her, the evil blonde. Let me show you a picture. Maybe you'll see the picture. Let's get into this couple right here. Her. We're gonna get into her. We're gonna get into this one. And she killed her boyfriend, stabbed him. And there's her mommy and daddy, a bunch of enablers. That after she stabbed her boyfriend, she's in a hotel bar having cocktails with her daddy. You just stabbed your boyfriend. Why are you sitting here having drinks? Yeah. We're going to get into you. You're going to be the next trial. Yep. I'm going to have fun with you. Okay, let's resume.
He's from down in Miami, I think. He talked about the trauma, that you cannot escape from the abuse, so you develop coping skills to protect yourself, knowing that the bad things will happen today. It changes your behavior, not only your behavior, but your thinking. Your subjective thinking about fear and what to do. And if you remember, Dr. Brandon said it's all about that person's perception. Okay? A lot of times they will self-medicate with alcohol or drugs. A lot of times they suffer from anxiety. Basically, he said the trauma ends up being terror because you do not know what to expect. You do not know what is going to happen that night. It may be a great night. You may drink, and both of you have a great time. He falls asleep, passes out. You fall asleep, passes out. But it may turn, depending on his mood. I don't know if you can tell. She would try to placate him. Dr. Brandon said, when you're trying to evaluate somebody, it takes time to get them to trust you. And the ultimate goal, he said, is to be a behavioral detective. If you're a forensic psychologist, is to be a behavioral detective. And the ultimate goal is to put yourself in the abused person's eyes so you can better understand their world. But ultimately, it's their perception of danger. Their perception of danger is what you have to look at. What a reasonable person would do under their perception of danger. Now, I'll go on. Trauma experts explain how victims' reactions in moments of stress are the product of the damaged psyche. Her actions, although tragic, and it was a tragedy, George Torres lost his life in that suitcase. It's a reactionary response to sustained trauma. It's as if Sarah was acting out of a deeply ingrained fear and helplessness developed over the years. So it's a desperate need for survival, but battered women do things to keep the peace from time to time. And when they feel like they have a small portion of momentary power, they may enjoy that by vocalizing their position to the abuser. Sarah Boone's not perfect. Sarah Boone would argue with him, talk down to him. Some would say was somewhat abusive to him.
Deb, we're gonna have some fun with her. Woo! Yeah, we're gonna have some fun with her. She evil. I don't understand Deb. Her man went to the Go Subway to get a sandwich, and then he comes back. What was it like? 30 minutes later, he's unalive. Interesting. All right, let's get back to Mr. James Owen.
Sarah's not charged with that. Sarah Boone is not charged with that. And I want to read you something.
Good luck, right? Good luck.
Essentially, I don't know where it's at, but I'm going to have to come back to it. But essentially what it said was, eventually, it's been a 2-week trial, I want you to know. Try and get this right. I know it's important. What I wanted to say was someone can be mean and angry and hateful, and intoxicated, and still be abused. They're not mutually exclusive. And mutual abuse exists where one is abusive towards another. And eventually the victim, Sarah Boone, trying to fight back against the abuse, became verbally abusive. While the victim has committed verbal abuse, it is important to remember that they, Sarah Boone, are the victim and have been pulled into an extremely vicious cycle where they are trying to survive. Sarah Boone intentionally left George Torres in the suitcase. What's the act of a battered spouse syndrome woman? She went up to her room, she fell asleep, and passed out. These actions are disconnected. Ultimately, she didn't let him out because of her fear that she knew if he got out in that moment, what he would do. That's real fear. That's real trauma that she was experiencing at that time. Now, I talked to you about force being used. And I think I talked to you about blocking an attack using a physical restraint like the suitcase to block somebody's attack. And the example I give, I've got a couple of examples that may or may not apply. Let's say you're at a bar and you've got your buddies and the other guy's got their buddies and they're drinking and it ends up being an argument between two of them. And you realize that these two are fixing to get in it. Well, one of your buddies comes around on the other side and grabs the guy before he's able to strike him, right? So you're committing an offense on this guy, but it's a restraint. It's a restraint. You grab him by the neck and try to get him out the bar. So yeah, you're committing an act, but it's designed to defend another, which is legal. Or let's say you have a situation where you have a police officer and he's on patrol. You know, he's in uniform, he's wearing a firearm, and of course he's got the bulletproof vest. And he's called, he goes to a call where there's a suspect that may be armed. A suspect that may be armed. And so he gets there, he gets out of the squad car, he's walking around, of course he's taking out his gun because he realizes maybe aren't. And eventually he sees the suspect, and the suspect reaches for his waist. Now, in that moment in time, that officer has to make a decision. Am I going home with my family tonight? And I asked Dr. Werner about this Vaseline thing it's called fear response or fight or flight. You know, those decisions are made, it's instinctive based on your set of circumstances. She instinctively reacted to her unique set of circumstances to save her life or save herself from another one of these. I'm 63. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that. Her father's not around. I need to talk about the case a little bit. And if you remember, I'll get back to it. If you'll remember, that's my place a little bit. Let's start with the witnesses, and then I'll talk about safety. But the first witness out of the box for the state, if you remember, was Juan Torres, the brother. Remember that? It was some time ago. I know it's been a while. Y'all taking notes. You may have to go back. Their first witness was a good witness for us. Their first witness in their prosecution of Sarah Boone for murder was a good witness for us. Remember Tony Henderson with the cross-examiner, Juan Torres. Asked him, what did you hear Sarah Boone say? Juan Torres, she was yelling, he's been choking me. He's been choking me. Mr. Henderson said, did that surprise you? Juan Torres said no. That family knew what was going on. The police knew what was going on. The neighbors knew what was going on. Pearl Walker came in here, 80-something years old, in a wheelchair. Kevin Beck called her up. She saw it. Is there any doubt? Is there any doubt? I tell you why there's no doubt. In cross-examination, I got Dr. Warner to even admit it. Did you hear it? Yes? Okay, Mr. Old. She suffers from battered spouse syndrome. But they didn't know direct. Well, maybe I don't really know. I haven't had enough time to really see her. You hadn't seen the pictures? You hadn't seen the 2-minute video? You've seen it one time earlier this month. One time. And she's going to start testifying about stuff she's never said before until she showed up in court? About, well, based on what she told me, I don't think she was in imminent fear? Come on. This is a courtroom. This is a courtroom. Good thing y'all are here. Well, thank you. But it gets even worse than that. It gets even worse than that here in this courtroom. The state attorney referred to these pictures. And I was going to rise up and show these pictures to you.
Overall,
And I was going to rise up and show these pictures to you. Well, yeah, I'm going to do that. They put her on trial for murder. But what did they say? And I got to turn to this. Make sure I get this exactly like they said it. I took a bunch of notes. Let me make sure I got this quote. Can't even find it, but it was something to the effect, maybe George Torres is the battered spouse. Can you believe it? Can you believe that? Now you know why we're here. Now you know why we're here. Little boys learn early on that girls are different. You do not put your hands on a girl. You can't wrestle with them, you can't punch them, you can't kick them. You can't treat women that way. When you become adults, I don't care what she does to you. I don't care what she says to you. If she gets in your face, whatever she does, you do not have a right to hit a woman. No, sir. What has the state attorney tried to do?
Objection, proper argument.
Sustained.
What has they done?
Objection.
What evidence have they tried to put on?
Overruled.
What evidence have they tried to
Don't
paint
forget,
Sarah?
it's like you
Sarah.
said, they had a good day, right? Mm-hmm.
What evidence? Controlled and manipulated were the words they used. You know, this ain't the 1900s. This is 2024. What's all these text messages? Why is that relevant? What are they trying to claim? She provoked his violence? She provoked his violence. Isn't that what they've done here in this trial?
Proper argument.
Sustained.
Let me get back on this. Abraham Marino. I don't know if you remember him. Abraham Marino changed his statement. They took a statement from Abraham Marino in which Sarah stated, I don't know if you remember, but it was when the police were all there. I think they got the tape out and some neighbors were coming around and there were 2 or 3 neighbors sitting around. He said, Sarah came out and stated it was an accident. Okay? Well, then, it was an accident. This Abraham Marino knew George Torres from Philly. Okay? They were friends. They would talk either at the complex or if Marino went to Hall's Hardware or Ace Hardware, what it's called. The state attorney notifies.
Good. I'm going to object to reading from things that are not in evidence.
Approach.
Another objection there from the prosecution. We've had several more in the last few minutes, so probably close to a dozen objections now, and I think maybe 2 of them have been sustained, but both of those have come in just the last couple of minutes as James Owens, the defense attorney, called out several times the state attorney and points that they were making and arguments they were making and evidence they were showing as the defense delivers its closing argument. He began at 4:43, so been going on for about 40 minutes now so far in his closing argument.
Power. Marino says, all I heard Sarah say that afternoon was it was an accident. And then he came in here today, or this week, and said, no, she said, I was teaching him a lesson, things got out of hand, and then I fell asleep. 4.5 years later, we know he's friends with Torres. We heard it here. Now, I want to talk to you about the the two boys that live right next door. You remember Vincent Battaglia and Brandon Motes? Remember those guys? And you remember it came out in testimony, this event.
Susie Q and Raining Woman, I want you to look. You see, this is how, I know it's kind of like an older picture, but notice how he looks more fuller, more hydrated. You know what I mean? But when he started messing around with this Satan's daughter, then he started looking like this. Just want y'all to notice that. All right, let's get back to it.
Happened on February 23rd, 2020. But it came out in the testimony that Sarah had said, Jorge Torres, the night before, February 22nd of 2020, grabbed me by my hair and pulled me down the stairs in my apartment from top to bottom, which is consistent with what they were saying happened, remember? But they got the dates wrong. And remember, Mr. Henderson called Deputy Copsel or Detective Copsel up in our case, and she had to say, yeah, I didn't take their two statements until the 27th, February the 27th, remember? So they're remembering back, and they both had similar stories. Of course, they had time to talk by then, the 27th. I think the only recorded interviews they got that the night of this event, February 23rd, was from Sarah Boone and her ex-husband, Brian Boone, right? So they came back following up on the 27th. That's when they got a statement from Brandon Motes and Vincent Battaglia. And at that time, they said, yeah, we heard that sound. You remember Sarah testifying? No, that was the night before. I complained about that, and I think one of them had testified. Yes, she had said something about being drugged down the night before. It may have been, I can't remember now who it was, one of them. And, it looked like that there may be some implication that Sarah got him in the suitcase and pushed him down the stairs. But I think we didn't have anything more than that. Remember? And then this photograph, which we introduced, which shows the bottom of the stairs, as you can see, there's Lucas's bookshelf right here. This is where Sarah Boone stored Lucas's stuff. You can see it's not disturbed at all.
Susie Q, he's not that guy. He's not. If you can watch my other live stream I did before, you're going to see some videos. Well, it's heart rate. It might be a little too much. It might be too much to watch. But he's not that guy. He's not abusive. I don't see him the type to walk in there, oh, where you been? Psh, psh. No, he's not. Just like, let's get into her husband. When you watch him, he's not that guy either, Susie. These are the type of guys she like to pick. She picks these type of guys that she can use and abuse and manipulate and just, treat them like crap. Because you know why? She doesn't like herself and she hates herself. So, she finds men that she can use and abuse. Pure evil. Resume.
Anyway, I want to get back to Sarah. I want to talk a little bit about that. But let me talk a little bit about the law on justifiable use of force. Is legal and lawful if you reasonably believe, I think we all probably already understand it by now, you reasonably believe it was necessary to prevent imminent threats to harm.
Well said, Melanie. Susie Q, all the videos of him drunk show him sad, depressed, withdrawn, not wound up, and abused and abusive. He's not that guy. He's not. And he's never been that guy. Because we didn't hear anything about the past, any past women that he was with, that he was abusive, or he's got arrested for. Only until this heifer came around.
Harm. The law is crucial, ensuring that individuals can safeguard themselves in potentially dangerous situations. By acknowledging you have a right to defend yourself when you have a reasonable belief that force is necessary to prevent an attack. Okay? What did Mr. Henderson say in jury selection? You don't have to wait You do not have to wait. If you're facing, in your mind, a reasonable, imminent threat, you don't have to wait. Let's talk about Sarah Boone and this unconventional form of physical restraint to block the attack of Jorge Torres. What did she say? Assault tape. Now, you got to think about that. You got to think about what was going on. You got to think about the trauma she was undergoing. You got to think about they've both been drinking, and you got to think about the fact that it was all fun and games for a while. And I think the biggest thing to know is that Jorge Torres chose to get in the suitcase. He's a grown man. That was his choice. She didn't force him in at gunpoint to get into that suitcase. He voluntarily got into that suitcase because they were drunk and being silly and stupid and playing hide and seek. Which I guess when you get so drunk, that seemed like a good thing. Zipped him up, they're laughing, carrying on. And as you know, Sarah likes to videotape a lot. And I know you've seen some of these videos and you're wondering why, but I think the evidence shows that when George is being videotaped, he's not going to do anything. If you think about that, when George is being videotaped, that's like her power. You know, Dr. Harper said that Sarah's words are her power. Sarah's words are her power. Physically, she's no match for George. Physically, she's no match. But that's her power, it's her words. When she gets a chance, to have some control, that's what she does. And she videotapes, because she knows when she's videotaping, she can tell it like it is. I can tell him what I want to tell him. A couple of these videos you've seen, she's telling him like it is. But she's got that video camera on, and George knows. He's being videoed. We've got one that we're going to show you in a little bit. Before he loses it. Just a little bit. Right again. And of course, we got the TV. But they're kidding around, playing around. Then, Sarah realizes, okay, this is my chance to say something to him. So she sits down, she turns on the phone, and you've seen the tape. You've seen the tape. For everything you've done to me, are the first words out of Sarah's mouth when the video begins. There's a lot packed into those words. Think about that. For everything you've done to me. This is how it feels when you choke me.
Melanie, you talking about what was on Court TV? If you talking about what's happening on Court TV, I seen that too, and that's what she said. He was just a ladies' man. She didn't say nothing about him being abusive. Mm-hmm.
Now that's in direct response and the result of the abuse that she suffered at the hands of Jorge Torres. She wants him for that moment to feel how she feels. She wants for that moment to feel, for him to feel how she feels. How uncomfortable, lack of control that she feels when George is violent with her. Just for a moment, she won't do it to her. And if you can imagine,
Approach.
I think from the evidence, you can determine she was crazy. She was crazy. And I don't know if, of course, it's a syndrome, but she felt like she couldn't do without it. And let's say she videotapes it, and then it's turned off. And there's a 9-minute gap, 11-minute gap, whatever it is. I said 11, they're saying 9, but I think if you count 2 of the other minutes. But there's 9 minutes that we don't have video. But what did Sarah say? Now, if you remember when you listen on that video, George is talking in a normal voice. He's not stressed. Of course, if you're talking, you can breathe. She had said she had some air. And of course, she doesn't realize the situation, that it's going to end the way it ends. So she has no appreciation of that. It's a canvas, it's all she knows, an old canvas suitcase. And she's got some, the two zippers removed or spread out a little bit. So she thinks he's not being serious. But eventually he gets angry. She gets angry, he gets angry. He says words to her, and then his hand starts to come out of the suitcase. She also said his tone changed. And I know everybody's got a cadence with their spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, but you know what I'm talking about. We've got a way of talking to people. We've got a way, your wife, your husband, you know each other. You know when they come in from work, what kind of mood they're in. Just by a couple of things, the way you just sense it, right? Well, especially somebody as hypervigilant as Sarah and as hypervigilant as a battered spouse woman would realize that he can flip the switch at any time. When I get out of here, I'm going to end you. And he realizes he's getting out. He got his hand out. At that moment in time, in Sarah's mind, that's an imminent threat. So she's got a justifiable right to use force. What did she do? She went over there and grabbed it. She lifted it up. She tried to get his hand back in, remember? She tried to get his hand to go back in. When you go back in, so her son's back was 3 feet away. When the police found it the next morning, same spot, no attempts to hide, no attempts to delete phone, no attempts to tamper with evidence, nothing. In the same spot as it was. She picks up the bat, she pokes. And she pokes him hard, trying to get him to stop trying to get out. And eventually he does. And you've seen the blunt force injuries, and you saw some of the circular injuries where you can tell there's a poking. I think it's right around here. And she poked him several times. You remember the pathologist said, I think, maybe 5, 6, or 7 times. She pokes him. And he's got some scratches. I don't know if they'll let you look at it, but on the back of that suitcase, it's got some bars, some metal bars that are inside the lining. There's some lining, and it's for support when you walk in. She testified. You heard what she said, that she was justified. That's uncontroverted testimony. Now, let's talk about the jury instructions just for a minute. And I want to talk about reasonable doubt for a minute. Can't find the page, but I've got one. I've got one more page. Did you find it? Y'all all looking. I think it's on page 15 or 22. We're going to talk about reasonable doubt in a minute, but if you look at those bottom 3 short paragraphs, it is the evidence introduced in this trial and it alone that you're to look for the evidence or look for that proof. A reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant may arise from the evidence itself, a conflict in the evidence, or lack of evidence. But here's the main thing. Obviously, I represent her, and I'm trying my best to show you honestly and fairly the doubt in this case. And 5 reasonable doubts, 17 reasonable doubts, 25 reasonable doubts. You have to have 1 reasonable doubt. I'm trying to show you throughout the evidence that each one of you can have a different reasonable doubt. Difference, but 1 reasonable doubt about the state's case, and your verdict is not guilty, according to law. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean proof beyond all doubt. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt, speculative doubt, or imaginary or forced doubt. Such a doubt must not influence you to return a verdict of not guilty if you have an abiding conviction of guilt. And this is a deeply held belief. Reasonable doubt is the highest standard we recognize in litigation. Car wreck or something like that is preponderance of the evidence standard, 51% you're entitled. Abiding conviction, that's a deeply held belief that you must have if you're thinking about something. That's a firm belief. That's a level of certainty that you would have. That's what you got to have as a juror. I've got to be certain of her guilt. If, on the other hand, if after carefully considering, comparing, and weighing all the evidence, which we want you to do, there is not an abiding conviction of guilt, so I'm not certain. I'm not certain of her guilt. Or if you have a conviction, I think there's some evidence of guilt, but it is one that is not stable, one which wavers and vacillates. One which wavers and vacillates. Then the charge is not proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and you should find the defendant not guilty because the doubt is reasonable. You understand that? You've got to be certain of guilt. That's the high standard we recognize. If I've got some evidence of guilt, so okay, there's some evidence for conviction, but it's not it's not stable. It wavers and vacillates. And then under our system, you've got a reasonable doubt, and you've got the power and authority and the obligation under the law, if that's the way you feel, to vote that way. Later in the instruction, it goes on. It's up to you to decide what evidence is reliable. You should use your common sense in deciding which is the best evidence and which evidence should not be relied upon in considering your verdict. You may find some of the evidence not reliable or less reliable than other evidence. You may rely on your own conclusion about the credibility of a witness. That is totally the province of the jurors to decide that. A juror may believe or disbelieve any or all the part of the evidence of the testimony of any witness. I want to show you this before I begin. But Dr. Werner said, this is their expert again. He testified that Sarah Boone suffers from battered style syndrome. Battered women's experiences affect her perception of imminent danger. Those past experiences with Jorge Torres, and there's a bunch, affect their perception. Remember Dr. Michael Brandon talked about perception of imminent danger. Victims of repeat violence may fear death in situations others would not. The reason Sarah experiences all this, the reason she was feeling the way she was feeling, that imminent threat of danger from Jorge, was because of Jorge Torres. Jorge Torres is responsible for her mental state because of the way he has violently treated her. She reacted to his attempts to get out because of the way he treated her and the way she knows what is he going to do if he gets out of the suitcase? She knows. The second video is playing. She's flipped it back upside right. You hear him, it's 22 seconds. He says, Sarah, she's not going to open that suitcase. She's not going to open that suitcase. He's already threatened her. She used the bat to get him to stop trying to get out of it. Why would she do that? Why would she do that? I know what he's going to do. I know what he's going to do to me. I know him like I know him more than he knows himself. I know what he's going to do to me. You don't have to wait. That was justifiable. Now, you got to understand this. She intentionally used the bat to defend herself. She intentionally didn't unzip it to defend herself. Both of those are lawful under our law. She went upstairs. The dogs were upstairs. At some point, she called her husband, her ex-husband, Brian Boone. We know that many times she testified, or somebody in court said, she would often flee to her ex-husband's house. Sometimes. I believe that testimony came out. Maybe Sarah or somebody. That sometimes she would flee, or sometimes she would flee to upstairs. One of those two. But the dogs were up there. She made a phone call. At some point, she fell asleep, passed out, fell asleep. We don't know. They had 2 big bottles of wine. Right? That was unintentional. That was unintentional. His death was unintentional. You remember when she was in the interrogation room? You remember that? Now, I don't know if we did a good job of this, but it came out that she got arrested. You remember the one time when she got the black eye? She got arrested for strangulation. And you remember that? They ended up over there by the dryer, and he was banging her back of her head on the floor that had very little carpet on it. And she ended up getting her arms out, and then she grabbed his neck. And she eventually got him off of her. And that's when he got up and stomped her in the eye. Remember? Well, the police came for that event, and they took statement, and Sarah was honest with the officers about what all, and they arrested her. You remember? Remember that? They arrested her. And she said, why? I was fighting back. You remember that? Why? I was fighting back. So from that point on, she didn't trust law enforcement. The video that they showed a while ago about George, that was about dropping the case, where she was defending herself and fighting back. I want to talk about this investigation by law enforcement. Now, she didn't know the law. She's not a lawyer. She gets up the next morning. Brian's calling. Sarah's got to pick up Lucas at 3. Brian's calling. Eventually, she walks down. She's looking for George. Where's George? It's quiet down there. Then she looks in the bathroom. She looks out and smokes a cigarette. He's on the computer. She sees the suitcase. And you can imagine.
Objection. Holding roll.
Sustained.
She sees him in a suitcase. She panics. But what does she do? What does she do? She tries to get her fiance out of the suitcase. They're engaged to be married. She's not trying to kill him. They're engaged to be married. She gets him out. She tries to do, he's purple. She tries her best to do CPR. She doesn't, you heard her, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, call Brian. That's her safety valve. That's all she's got. Brian eventually says, just come over. She calls again in 2 minutes. I'm on the way. He gets there. You got to call 911. Man told her before, call 911. She calls 911. She tries to do CPR again. Is she busy trying to hide evidence? She busy trying to hide evidence? She busy trying to hide the back? No, she's trying to save his life. If she can. So the police get there. She knows if she told them, she fought back, she's going to be arrested. That's what happened before. That's what happened before. Like George just said on the video, she'd never been arrested before. Before that time, she was charged with that with George. She lies. She lies. She's scared. She's scared. She doesn't know what to do. So she lies. She makes a decision to lie. Don't trust law enforcement. She doesn't know the law. She doesn't call a lawyer. She talked to Officer Rodriguez, was the first short black female that came up here first, the first one that arrived again. Talks to her. There's a report statement there where she doesn't tell the whole story. She lies. And then the detectives eventually get there and get her in the squad car. You hear the audio. I think it was played. She lies again. Then the next day, she goes down to the sheriff's department. Now, if they would have told her, hey, man, I'm going to arrest you. And she gets a lawyer to go down there to make a statement. And the lawyer would advise her.
Objection. Facts on evidence.
Sustained.
Move strike.
Stricken. The jury will pay no mention or give any weight to that statement.
She's not a lawyer. She didn't have a lawyer present when she made her statement. She didn't know the law. She didn't know she was justified in defending herself the way she did in this dysfunctional, toxic, abusive relationship. I don't know if you remember, it was a 2-hour video, but there was some things she said, not intentional. And eventually, she wanted the detective, it was Detective Lowen, the male detective. And she said, I swear to you on my son's life, it was not intentional. What she was talking about was that George passed. Was that George died. That was not intentional. She thought he was fine in there. Would he sober up? We've learned from their history
This is how it started. She was going through her divorce was already official, whatever it was. So she said, "Hey, let me just go on over to the bar and have a drink." George Torres, if I'm correct, I guess he left from Philly or something like that, and he came to Florida. Start his life over. I think him and his wife broke up, and he just go to the bar to have a drink too. And unfortunately, he looks over, and then them two meet. And of course, they both have a thing for alcohol. So you know the rest of the story. Wow. He didn't know when he walked in that bar what was going to happen about 2.5 years later.
When Sarah gets drunk, she calls for help. When George gets drunk, he beats Sarah. That's their pattern. How many times do we see Sarah call the law? That's their pattern. Sarah told me, I didn't know, I think she said, I didn't know something like this could happen. I've never done it before. And Detective Lowen said, well, what did you expect that was going to happen? I've got a daughter that she was about 18 or 19, and she got a grandmother's hand-me-down pickup truck. It was an older truck, but she didn't have it long, and she was gassing it up, but she didn't put any oil in it. Eventually, it darked them up. And you don't know what you don't know. I hadn't done a good job of explaining, hey, you got to put oil in it too. Sarah Boone didn't know that he could die in it. It's an old beat-up canvas suitcase that she left a gap in. And as naive as that sounds, she didn't appreciate the danger. I mean, is that the way you want to kill somebody? Is that the way you're going to do it? She had Lucas to take care of it. Am I going to go to prison doing it like this? No attempt to hide the crime.
She don't care about her son. It's clear as day she don't. Because if she did, she would have took that plea bargain, but she didn't. She didn't. I bet you the son probably have stories to tell. When he was the time that she had him for the weekend or for the weekday or whatever, oh boy. She was probably 90% of the time with her son. She was drunk or passed out, one or the other. But now he's 14 years old. I'm assuming this is his first year in high school. And he's with the dad, so he'll be okay. I just hope that, he's getting some therapy and everything, because this is serious. Resume.
I think the evidence is clear. That's how this happened. I don't want to belabor the point. I do want to show you. Just quickly show you. Sarah Boone got stabbed. And think about that. Stabbed with a steak knife in the leg. And she stayed with it. She stayed with it. Poked between the eyes with a curtain rod. Stalked in the eye. And who does that? The law empowers an individual to defend their life and safety when faced with a threat and to prevent an attack. That's what Sarah Boone did. That's what Sarah Boone did. I think it's important to understand Sarah had to be the parent a lot of times. It was her place. She had that $1,000 a month from the
Exactly, Susie. That's what it was all. That was about. She coming at him, and he was defending himself. That was it. I don't see him just, hauling off, hitting her. She was late or she was out of pocket, and he said, "Let me just, No, 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 Sarah. We do not believe that." And the jury didn't believe it too. And all the proof is in the videos. It's all there. The prosecution is doing a rebuttal closing. It's really good, so don't zoom past it. Okie dokie. All right, so that's right after this. Okay. Make sure. We got to see that. We got to see that one. All right. Resume.
divorce settlement coming in. She had the car. She had the phone. She had the keys. She had to be the parent in a lot of ways. I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Harper. Do you remember, Dr. Harper is from Okaloosa County, which is up in the Panhandle, close to where we're from. And she's the doctor that treated Sarah from early on. When this happened in 2020, I think she first saw Sarah Boone shortly thereafter. And over the 4.5 years, saw her 9 times and did all the testing for post-traumatic stress. Of course, she has the experience from veterans, and she's testified that she's now just traveling around the state, testifying as a forensic psychologist. But she talked about how important it was to develop trust with the patient over a course of time. It's just going to take time when you have somebody suffering that kind of trauma and that kind of damaged psyche. It's going to take some time to get them where they can trust you and really tell you and talk to you and tell you what's going on with them. And she talked about, that Sarah uses her words with power. I think her testimony, I think the evidence supports that her testimony was credible.
Objection.
The evidence supports that her testimony was
Objection
credible.
is sustained.
I can't give my person. Okay. The evidence supports that her testimony was credible because of the time that she spent, because of the number of tests that she did, that she diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, alcohol use disorder, I think anxiety disorder, and battered spouse syndrome. And Dr. Warner confirmed that. And Dr. Michael Brandon, the first witness, he was brought in as a subject matter expert. So he hadn't treated Sarah. He was just testifying about the condition. He's been doing it a long time. He's an expert at it. And that's to advise you to try to understand what's going on. And as crazy as it sounds, in this syndrome, they try to protect the abuser. They're in love with them. They try to protect them. I don't know if you remember that there was a time where Sarah Boone had a conversation with one of the neighbors and talked about something. And she said, "Did you hear anything yet last night?" Remember, she said, "Shh, it's okay." Both George and Sarah lied to the police. They lied to medical people. I don't know if it's shame. It just comes with the syndrome that you stay trapped in it. I think another big, if you think about this, when Sarah gets beaten by George, she calls the police. When Sarah gets beaten by George, she calls the police. And a lot of times she just wants him out. Just get him out. Get him to leave. She doesn't want him to get in trouble. She just wants him out. There never was a report of George calling the police on Sarah. She wasn't physically abusing him. The state is trying to present evidence. Is she emotionally abusing?
Sustained. Stricken. Members of the jury will pay no attention to that comment. Give it no weight whatsoever.
I believe the evidence that's been presented by the state is an attempt to show that Sarah mentally or emotionally abused George Torres.
The jury said, "Judge, don't worry. We already got the decision. Once we saw that him in the suitcase, there's nothing that could be said or done. That's it. He was in the suitcase. She was hitting him with a bat. No, that don't sound like a victim. Sound like somebody who wants to intentionally hurt him. Reason.
Again, she's not charged with that. She's not perfect. Some of that was her trouble. In Sarah's situation, you do become numb and hardened, I think, over time. That's a coping mechanism. It's a day-to-day thing, some good days, some, But the homicide detectives, I don't know if you saw that 2-hour video. At some point in the 2-hour video, they started talking about some of the violence. And they go, we know. They had already checked with neighbors or whoever. They knew. The neighbors knew. Police officers knew who responded. Torres' family knew. They all knew about the abuse. Dr. Harper testified that abused women act differently when they perceive a threat. I think Sarah Boone was loyal to her fault to George, even through all the abuse. Judge, I want to make a comment about a couple of things that were said by the prosecutor in opening statement. Okay. The prosecutor in opening statement, when he was talking about George Torres passing away, he started talking about Sarah Boone. And his quote was, because I wrote it down, George, in Sarah Boone's mind, George Torres deserved it. George Torres deserved it. That's the position they made. He deserved to die. She loved the man. She wasn't trying to kill him. He also...
We see the video. What kind of love is that? What do you mean she loved the man? She tormented the man. She insulted the man.
6:04 p.m. and closing arguments continue. James Owens, defense attorney, been speaking for about an hour and 20 minutes at this point, a little over that. He was just recently talking about, about 10 minutes ago, talking about when Sarah gets drunk, she calls for help. When George gets drunk, he beats Sarah. That's their pattern. Then he showed those photos of injuries from prior domestic violence incidents between the couple. He has talked about the imminent threat that he said Sarah Boone faced, and in his argument that this was a justifiable use of force. He talked about the 9 minutes between those videos, those two cell phone videos, and talked about how they said George got angry, his tone changed, and talked about those moments when his hand came out of the suitcase, that was an imminent threat, and that Sarah Boone ended up using a justifiable use of force in not letting him out of that suitcase.
I'm just fast forwarding until we get to when they go back on. I don't want to miss anything.
And there you see family members of George Torres, including Juan Torres, his younger brother who testified early in the trial. I believe that was day one of the trial that he testified, wearing an Ace Hardware shirt where George Torres, his brother, used to work. They have been sitting on the front row there. Also, you see on the end, Detective Chelsea Kepsel, the homicide detective who investigated this case. She has been there today as well during these closing arguments as they continue. Court started this morning, fairly early, and has been going for hours now. So the charging conference began.
That I introduced late, and there were no contact provisions, where there had been a court order from a judge, not only a verbal order, but it was reduced to writing. So there was a court order for George Torres not to have any contact with Sarah Boone. Okay? Court system got involved. Would have no contact with George Torres. Now, I need to talk a little bit about that. And they talked about coercion, coercive control, power and control. We know about his abuse. We know he destroyed the home, the TV. We know about his jealousy. You know, some of the things he said to her. We know about how he treated her dogs. Nicely when he was sober, but at times abused the dogs or threatened to do so.
I don't believe that. I don't believe he was there hurting those dogs. And one is blind and one is deaf. No, George is not that type of guy.
You think about power and control when you're controlling a person. And I think she testified that he kind of smothered her, always around her. Part of his fear was her realizing that she had enough and to leave it for good. That she would get the strength over time if she had enough time away from him where she wasn't in control of it and he wasn't in control of it. Enough time away, she would come to her senses and realize she could do better. Judge has been getting court orders all week. I didn't stop George Torres. George Torres knew he was going to lose control. If she had a bunch of time away from him, she might move on. He was willing to violate a court order to maintain control. That's George Torres. I want to show a couple of videos. I want to say something to you. Shelby Andrews is going to help me. If we could dim the lights. Yes.
Do you understand? As of this moment, and until I can get you out, get the fuck out of here. I dare you.
Did you see him?
Yeah, look at him. Get away from me. Get away from me. Get away from me. I'm gonna scream bloody murder. I'm gonna scream bloody murder.
Did you see him flip the switch? In that instance, where he lost it, even though the video was going.
Get the hell out of here, you dumb lawyer. You lying lawyer. You know when she starts something and then he responds and then turn the camera on.
Thank you, Judge. You turn it off. Can you turn it off? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on.
Oh, you know, defense, you really tried. You really tried.
Yeah, he did try, but
he did try, didn't he? He did try.
I mean, all she did was she gassed him up and then starts throwing blows at him, and then when he responds, she turns the camera on.
Yep. That's what they do. That's what they do, Jack. That's what these toxic women do.
Based on the circumstances she was facing at the time of this tragedy. Based on the battered spouse instruction, which is a special instruction that's given when women have a heightened sense of fear and trauma that you're to utilize in applying her subjective standard to the reasonable standard of what a reasonable person would do under her circumstances and using the force that she used to defend herself. I hope I haven't missed anything. I tried my best.
Oh, he said he tried his best.
Sarah Boone fought back and survived. We ask that you do justice in
What's
this
going
case.
on, everybody? I'm sorry.
And find her not guilty because the doubt is reasonable.
Hit with some car trouble.
I tried to show you where the doubt was. I trust your judgment. We spent a long time picking the jury, 4 days. We trust you. We appreciate your service and your obligation to do your duty. You have the power and authority to right this wrong. That's what we're asking you to do. And give Sarah Boone some hope for a better life and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any rebuttal?
Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
Okay, Melanie, is this the part we talking about? We get ready to get into? Is this it? Is it?
Ladies and gentlemen, Jorge Torres is dead because the defendant believed he deserved to be zipped shut in a suitcase so that she could make him feel how she felt when he cheated on her, when he choked her, and to hold him there as a captive audience, according to her testimony. Now he has to listen to me. Well, right out of the gate, there are credibility issues. Cheating to me means viewing pornography. Well, we saw cheating really means women. And the heated conversation on June 14th about these women in Facebook. And that is what leads to the arrest on June 15th. He's outpouring, Candy Crush, all the bizarre things that you see in her phone. She uses the legal system as a weapon at times. There's no denying that they are engaging in violent behavior. And it is over nonsense. It is smashing TVs. They call the police and then they're standing there looking bewildered about what to do and who to say and laughing and joking. Ladies and gentlemen, the courtroom is a place for justice, not a suitcase. The reason we have a jury system originally started with the idea that the king, the crown in England, shouldn't be able to go and incarcerate citizens on his whim. So it developed into a system where citizens would have to say, yes, you can take our fellow citizen. But the opposite is also true. A citizen cannot take another citizen's life because he or she feels like it. That likewise requires a jury to decide that it was objectively reasonable for a person of ordinary prudence and caution. Like Mr. Cacciatore argued earlier, battered spouse syndrome is not a license to kill. Past grievances, even being stabbed in the leg, so on and so forth, do not give her the license to kill. There are still laws in place about when and how this can be done in a justifiable manner. I want to talk about the most important jury instruction in this case that has not been discussed very well or thoroughly. However, the use of deadly force is not justified if you find that Sarah Boone used force to initially provoke the threatened use of force against herself. And we'll stop at that comment. The facts of the case that came from her own mouth, if she is to be believed, and we will explore thoroughly why you should disregard every bit of her testimony, from court to the detectives, to the 911 operator, to the doctors. Her testimony, if it is to be the most favorable light that she has presented of comes a point in time where we're going to play hide and seek. And he says, tag, you're it. Even though she's it, she goes upstairs, hides in the shower, eventually gets tired of being there, it's cold, so on and so forth, and she comes back downstairs. And as she comes back downstairs, she can see Mr. Torres fiddling to place himself inside the suitcase to try and hide for this game. And the lid is not closed, it's flapping. And out of jest, out of levity, undisputed according to her testimony, she comes over there and zips it shut. Whether it's 100% or enough for 2 fingers to get out, that is something that you decide as the jury. But there came a point in time where the fun and games was over. And Mr. Torres told her that. Babe, I can't breathe. Sarah, babe, let me out. This is all in video. We don't have to imagine this. This is all on video, 1062. At that point in time, she is using force against him that is not justified. She is the initial provocateur. She is the aggressor under the law. And what level of force is it? I can't breathe. Not let go of my hand, not get your hands off me. I can't breathe. This is no different than two people, maybe they're buddies at the bar, similar to an example given by Mr. Owen, who are wrestling, and one has another one in a headlock. And there comes a point in time where the person on the receiving end of the headlock says, that's enough, I'm tapping. George Torres was tapping, and she ignored it. And she was kind enough to tell you why. Out of anger, which translates to hatred, ill will, spite, just like that in jury instruction for second-degree murder. She told you exactly why. She got angry. Him saying, I can't breathe, babe, was what triggered her. Not a fear of imminent harm. Those are her own words. That is the law. These are the two paragraphs that solve this equation without getting up on a big whiteboard in college that's 30 feet long, 15 feet high, and a ladder, and somebody's scribbling Latin words and Greek letters for months and months to solve this huge, complicated equation. The equation is solved in two paragraphs. She is the initial aggressor. He is saying, I can't breathe. It is no different than a naked chokehold that she does not let go of. And she told you it's because I want him to listen to me. This is my bully pulpit. This is how he made me feel in the past. She doesn't describe it as teaching him a lesson, but that's exactly what she says. I want him to feel like I felt in the past. I want to tell him things. Ladies and gentlemen, we can play semantical games, but that is teaching him a lesson. Therefore, we have to look at the other two paragraphs. Because right now, plain as day, the use of deadly force is not justified if you find that Sarah Boone used force to initially provoke the threatened use of force against herself. And what force are we talking about? Well, the threat of force that she tells you she was facing was him fighting for survival, him sticking his fingers out of the suitcase, him sticking his hand out. That is the threat of force, coupled with, I'm going to end you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, she is the initial provocateur. She is the one using deadly force against him. If I have somebody in a rear naked chokehold, they are entitled to use deadly force against me to break that chokehold, at least until we're separated. He had every right to say what he said. He had every right to exist and stick his hand out and try and survive to breathe another day. However, the use of force is not justified if you find that Sarah Boone used the force to initially provoke the threatened use of force against herself, unless she does one of two things. And she did neither. Not even close. The threat of force asserted towards the defendant was so great that she reasonably believed that she was in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm. All right, let's give her absolutely every benefit of the doubt, which you should. This is a criminal prosecution. The state of Florida has alleged she committed murder. You need to do everything you can to look for reasonable doubt. But a reasonable doubt is not an imaginary doubt, forced doubt, speculative doubt. So accepting that all their past history, accepting the doctor's testimony and the limitations on what they reviewed compared to what we reviewed. We did a much more thorough review of the relationship than any of the doctors did in this case. So let's give her that first clause. Because of their past relationship, with George now fighting for his right to exist and saying that he will end her if he gets out, we'll give her that. But just like Mr. Cacciatore mentioned earlier, lawyers' words mean things to us, and they mean things to everybody, but really to us. Or an and. There's an and. Had exhausted every reasonable means to escape the danger other than using deadly force on George Torres. She did not use every reasonable means to escape the danger that now, after provoking him, that he was presenting to her, according to her. She didn't pick up her cell phone and start walking, call 911. She didn't do anything other than, if you believe that is why she called Brian Boone, made a phone call to Brian Boone, and unfortunately, because of past history, he just ignored her drunken phone call. She did not exhaust every reasonable means to escape this danger that she created. She started it. She created this. Other than using the deadly force on George Torres. Now, this is a weird situation. This is not a rear naked chokehold. This is a suitcase, or as Mr. Cacciatore said, a box, or actually more aptly described it as a coffin. And when you secure somebody into a box or a coffin, you can still exert that deadly force on them from a distance. I'll give you a quick example from a couple of movies that I love. In 1977 in May, a movie came out, it's called Star Wars. They eventually called it Episode 4. In the first scene, there is this large, imposing figure that wears black armor. He is a government agent, and he is looking for some stolen classified documents. He picks a man up who he believes is responsible for this treachery and breaks his neck and chokes him to death when he doesn't tell him where the plans are. We all understand that. That is direct force we all understand. But what we need to understand is the force she's exerting from the couch. And then when she goes up to bed, she is still exerting that force on him. She set these implementations into motion and did not stop. So later in this movie that came out in 1977, another co-employee of this dark, imposing figure, Vader, insults his religion. He does not go to HR. He takes matters into his own hands and chokes this person from a distance. Ironically, while we're talking about force, it's the force. And then in the subsequent movie, he's like doing it from his office. He's killing his incompetent employees on different ships. Force, deadly force, can be exerted from a distance in this situation. So whether she's on the couch or whether she turns in for bed, she is still using that deadly force on him. She has not exhausted every reasonable means to escape this danger. Do something. You started this. You put him in the position where he cannot breathe. She's required by law to do something about it. Not something, everything. There was no efforts in this case. None. Or, in good faith, Sarah Boone withdrew from physical contact with George Torres and clearly indicated to George Torres that she wanted to withdraw and stop the use of deadly force. But George Torres continued or resumed the threatened use of force. That did not happen. She never withdrew from physical contact. She is still, like Vader, choking him from the couch, choking him from bed. She never withdrew that force. Physical contact includes any restraint on George Torres' movements. She never indicated that she wanted to withdraw. Sarah, babe, I can't breathe. All right, if I let you out, are you going to come out peacefully? Since I started this, I'm the one that made you not be able to breathe. That didn't happen. So ladies and gentlemen, this entire analysis about deadly force starts and ends there. She was the provocateur. These are her obligations when she starts it. She put him in fear of death. He is literally telling her, I cannot breathe. A couple other things about the law. Second-degree murder does not require a proof of intent to kill. Argument was made repeatedly that she didn't intend to kill him. That has never been the state's suggestion. Because why would we suggest we prove something that we don't have to? It's not her subjective belief. Well, Sarah Boone doesn't believe that this suitcase can kill him, even though he's repeatedly said, I can't breathe. It's a person of ordinary judgment who would
YouTubing. Welcome. I was thinking the same thing too. I'm glad that you brought that, because when I did see that video with the TV screen, and something just told me was already broken, it was just one of the moments, hey, let's just have fun and just smash it up. Yeah, she gaslight him to set him up so she can have a video to say that he's crazy. Oh my gosh. This man was going through some pure heck with this woman. And even when he was being arrested, every time being arrested, he still, I love you, babe. Wow. Just like this other guy. He another one. We're going to be talking about him whenever this darn trial starts. Him. I mean, this woman slapping you up everything. And he was just steady. I love you. I love you. Well, he had to tell her every day. He had to tell her every day to remind her, you the badass B. You the badass B. She had to boost his ego every day. Again, ladies and gentlemen, date smart, not thirsty, and stay narc-free. Resume.
No is reasonably certain to kill or do serious bodily injury to another. A person of ordinary judgment who hears, I can't breathe, babe, Sarah, and his voice gets weaker 9 minutes later, you're on notice. This is statutory notice. Done from ill will, hatred, spite, or evil intent. Her words speak for herself. This was not out of fear. This was out of hatred and anger. Born out of all those horrible things that has been done to her and done to him. Understand, we're not going to belabor the past. Is of such nature that the act itself indicates a difference in human life. I don't care that you're saying you can't breathe. Fuck you. That's my name. Don't wear it out. Fuck you. It's second-degree murder. We do not have to prove the intent to kill. We have to. She intended the act. She intended the act of zipping him shut. She continued to intend that act when he said, I can't breathe. That act resulted in his death. That's a manslaughter, but then when you add in the hatred, ill will, spite, and the depraved mind, that's what makes it second-degree murder. And that 2-minute video is the textbook definition of depraved mind as we define it here in Florida. Voluntary intoxication is not a defense. You cannot feel sorry for her because they had 2 1.5-liter bottles of wine and then some from the leftovers from the day before. And quite frankly, she's blackout drunk. She's blackout drunk. She doesn't remember making the videos. She turns her phone over right to the deputy the next day because she doesn't know what's on it. She doesn't remember doing it.
Yep, she didn't remember. She really didn't remember doing that.
Another thing that we just haven't talked about much is her story. She can't be up in the shower hiding and taking a picture at 11:03 p.m., 9 minutes before the video. That portion of her story just doesn't add up. And what it shows is it's more like 20 minutes instead of 11 or 12 minutes that we know he's trapped in what turns out to be his coffin. Let's talk about her testimony at trial. And we'll talk about all the problems. A lot of her issues predated her relationship with Mr. Torres. So it's not attributable to the trauma from Mr. Torres with all the luggage she brought into the relationship. And listen to the way she talks. It's not splitting the bills. It's helping without argument. It's not cleaning up and doing Sunday chores. It's cleaning up so we can relax. It's a reward. She talks about him like he's a child. I need to lead him to the next activity from one to the other. And then you saw all the videos, and I'm not going to belabor it, that we showed in rebuttal, but
She really did treat him like a child. That was her angle with him. Was treating him like a child. Because when you see that video of him on the floor and the way she was videotaping, it was like he was a kid. That really got me emotional. Bingo. Just like Donna has said over and over. It's so sad what he went through. He was suffering in silence. You know, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of men out here that do get abused. I've done commentary on it too. If y'all want to look at the past commentary I have done with men being abused. I usually do it in the month of October, which is domestic violence month. And this is domestic violence. All right, let me go back. So sad. It was already hard enough, you know, being a man and, you know, short. We got to call it as it is. It was already hard enough for him. And then his own woman, she wasn't no help. See, this is what these toxic people do. They find your weakness. And when they find your weakness, at first they act like they're so understanding, they're so nurturing. I don't see you that way. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. And then all of a sudden, one day they'll just change and they'll throw it in your face. And she's actually sitting in this courtroom still trying to degrade and humiliate him. And he's not even here no more. See how evil she is? And then the nerve of her. Do you hear this, Susie Q? The nerve of her. After she unalived him, right? She's gonna call up her ex-husband, tell him to come over. Like, what do you thought he was gonna do? Help you to cover a crime? See how she was already felt entitled with her ex-husband, like he was just gonna do this? But he was smart. He said, oh no, I'm not going in there. I'm not walking in that house. Resume.
the relationship and the power dynamics speak for itself. He was treated like the third dog. And it might very well have been a dog that bit and was violent, but he was treated like a dog. Why are you leaning against my door? Get out of here. Go downstairs. You're worthless. You're garbage. They showed the part of the video where he slaps the phone, but that's after 5 or 6 minutes of being berated and dehumanized in a way that nobody should be treated. He just wanted to get in bed and lay down next to his fiance. Instead, get away from the side of my door, you useless dog. I thought it might be a good point in time to listen to the music. You know, when does Mr. Torres get to decide what to do? I mean, she paints this picture that he goes off and does all these things on his own, goes and buys wine when he's not supposed to, does all these things when he's not supposed to, but when does he get to do what he wants? Suitcase downstairs for a week so they can donate it. What was in their lives that was preventing them from getting that suitcase to Goodwill or whatever? Neither one of them worked. What's going on? Lucas is over there on Mondays and Tuesdays. The story about the suitcase having already been down there is quite suspect, and we will get into that more. But again, it's not we went on a trip together, we had a great time. It's I quote unquote, I recently took him on a trip. Then it comes down to the moment of truth, which we've already gone over. And it's just quite frankly inconsistent because she doesn't, there's no explanation for the picture. Her explanation at trial when I brought it up to her was, I just don't remember. I don't remember this period in time from the picture at 11:03 to when I was supposed to be coming down the stairs. There's a major glitch in her matrix. She shakes the suitcase. Please stop doing this to me.
I see you.
And then his hand gets out. Now she's the point in time where she gets angry and doesn't do what the law requires after basically choking him with his coffin. Beats him into submission with the bat and turns it back over. For the first time ever at trial, she says, I'm going to fucking end you, is what he said. She never told that to even her doctors. We've heard the arguments why she didn't tell the truth to the police and all that. And there's a lot of truth into the argument that was made. There's a lot of truth. When the argument is made that she didn't understand self-defense, what that means, what it comes across as, she makes the story change as she learns about it. When we apply the jury instructions to her statement, all 6 of them apply against her. Won't belabor this since it was discussed earlier, but did the witness have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? Even at trial, she admitted that she was intoxicated for the first time. She went back and forth with the police about whether or not she was intoxicated and her standard of drunkenness and whatnot, but she was so intoxicated that she still felt the effects of it at 1 p.m. the following day. The medical examiner told you that alcohol dissipates in the average person. Everybody's different, tolerance, all sorts of things come into play, but on average, 0.015 grams per deciliter will dissipate every hour. So you can do the math. 0.015 times 14 puts her at 2.5 times the legal limit. For those reasons alone, you should not believe anything she told you. You should not believe anything she told the police. You should not believe anything she told the doctors. She was at 2.5 times the legal limit. She has a gap in her memory that's unexplained when I brought up the photograph at 11:03. You can't have it both ways. I don't remember 11:03 to 11:12, but I was upstairs in the shower hiding. Does the witness seem to have an accurate memory? Well, this ties into what we're talking about. But again, there's a glitch in the matrix, 11:03 to 11:12. Her memory is not accurate. By her own admission, I don't remember. She tells the police when they show her the video, I don't remember that happening. Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? I submit when we got off script, and by we, I mean with both attorneys, she wasn't as honest and straightforward as when it was a very directed and smooth examination. I came out of the gate with something that was off script. Tell me about Pamela Erickson. Tell me about Christine. Tell me about Crystal. Because she's the one that said cheating to her meant pornography. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know, she knew exactly who those people were and that she believed that he was cheating on them with her. And apparently she is too with some guy named Ben. When I describe this as a violent, nonsensical relationship, that's exactly what it is. It's not to downplay the violence. She got stabbed. She had minor surgery. It got infected. Those injuries are real. But they just don't apply in this case. They just don't apply when you use that self-defense instruction when she's the aggressor, if it's to be believed.
Object.
Roger.
Uh-oh. They're gonna get you, Sarah.
The attorney's now up speaking with the judge. A look at Sarah Boone sitting at the defendant's table. It is 6:43. It has been a long day in court. Things are getting ready to wrap up with the trial, and in this case, shortly will be in the hands of the jury. The prosecutor delivering this rebuttal, talking about how George was treated like a dog. He said, yes, he was a dog who bit, but he was still treated like a dog. A striking quote from earlier in that rebuttal from Assistant State Attorney Will J. The courtroom is a place for justice, not a suitcase.
May proceed. Objections overruled.
Let me say it loud and clear. Bad spouse syndrome does not have any effect on this case. It has no relationship to this case because she is the aggressor. She zipped him shut in the suitcase. After he said, I couldn't breathe, she wouldn't let him out. Therefore, all of the instructions above that paragraph of however do not apply. They do not apply. Now, turning back to what I was saying, did the witness have some interest in how the case would be decided? Well, of course. 3 out of 4 panels that y'all came from indicated to the judge fear of punishment was more important than the fear of public speaking. It speaks for itself. She has an interest in the outcome of the case. Now let's talk about, does her testimony agree with the other evidence in the case? You do not have to accept this story. Let's pretend, as you should, because all 6 of these things, we haven't gotten to the inconsistent statements. Let's pretend her testimony doesn't exist, and you just have to look at the circumstances. The testimony from the defendant is George Torres' head is here. You can stand if you need. You've been sitting a long time too. His head is here. His butt is kind of down here. His feet are here. And his hands and his knees are up here. He's in the fetal position, if we remember right. The hematoma on his head is on the left side. The bruises, the deep bruises on his back, are on his left side. You hear that? That's solid. You don't have to accept that she put those marks on him while he was in there. The evidence doesn't support it. You can conclude she used this bat when he was outside the suitcase. You don't have to believe her when she said they were playing hide and seek. You don't have to believe her because she doesn't know the rules. She came downstairs, saw what she'd done, and had all the opportunity in the world to clean up whatever mess may have been at the bottom of the stairs. But ladies and gentlemen, physics doesn't lie. She can't expect you to believe her testimony about the loud boom being the day before compared to her 2 neighbors who weren't drinking, who have no interest in the outcome of the case, who suffer from none of the infirmities of her testimony. She suffers from all 6 infirmities. When her neighbors say there was a loud boom that night, there was a loud boom that night. Did it shake the wall they shared in common? It shook the wall that they shared in common. Did she have any injuries consistent with being dragged up and down the stairs the night before? No. You saw the pictures the CSI took. You don't have to accept her story about hide and seek. Something made that loud boom. It takes energy to make a loud boom. Energy that could very well be in the form of somebody going down some of the stairs, all of the stairs, in the suitcase, out of the suitcase. But that's what the evidence supports, is there was a loud boom that shook the walls and interrupted a FaceTime conversation that was so loud that the girlfriend on the other end heard it. Something loud happened. And then there was silence, according to the witnesses. And they can argue that Juan Torres' testimony was great for them. It's great for the state. She was screaming at him already at 7:30 p.m. She was already on her bully pulpit. And we know she doesn't need to put him into the coffin to get on her bully pulpit. There's video after video of her on her bully pulpit telling him how it's going to be, how you're going to live your life. Go take a walk. Do this. Do that. You don't have to accept anything she said. It's inconsistent that he received the hematoma to his head, his bloody mouth. How is his mouth getting bloodied inside the suitcase? That's protected from her and her bat. But that suitcase, a 100-pound drunk woman is not beating through the wood of that suitcase or whatever it is that's making that noise when it's thumped. Ladies and gentlemen, those injuries happened outside of the suitcase. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody or something went down those stairs. She has no injuries consistent with going down the stairs. He does. He has blunt force trauma all over him. You don't have to buy her story, and you shouldn't. The inconsistencies, I'm not going to belabor it. Your dinner is waiting in back. Let's just briefly talk about the experts, and we'll move on to the end. Dr. Brandon is absolutely fantastic. He explained everything that you all needed to know about battered spouse syndrome. And this isn't about whether one of them or both of them had battered spouse, because at the end of the day, she's the initial aggressor, and she had the duty to do the things that the law requires. But it does call into question the credibility of the past power dynamics of their relationship. Those videos speak for themselves. The officer in the last video asks him, dude, you're a guy. Why don't you do something about this woman, your wifey, who you don't want to rat on for beating you? He's like, man, I'm not a beefcake. I'm not going to rat her out. There's countless examples, if you apply Dr. Brandon's testimony to Juan Torres, that really shows you the power dynamics of the relationship. He was her violent pet. Dr. Harper, I don't find much quarrel with what she says about battered spouse syndrome, and nobody should. I mean, she's the expert. But she's not Ms. Boone's treating physician. She's not her treating psychologist. The way it was described in argument, and I believe from Dr. Brandon's testimony, was she's supposed to be a forensic detective. Get to the bottom of this. She's going to come in here at trial and tell you her opinion you should rely upon. With 9 visits, she never asked the defendant what it is the victim said that put you in imminent fear of death or great bodily harm. That's the crux of the matter, Doc. You're never going to ask her what it is he said or did for this grand jury instruction about threat of force or use of force? It's remarkable. And, you know, she didn't review everything that was presented to you. At the end of the day, it's your opinion that matters about this relationship. And again, we agree with Dr. Werner. It doesn't matter. She had the duty to retreat. She had the duty to take the chokehold off. And if it was too dangerous for her to directly take the chokehold off, she had the duty to do something else, everything in her power to stop him from dying, because she started it. She set it in motion. She used the force grip on him from a distance, the couch and from bed. It was her obligation to stop. She didn't. But Dr. Werner, she was called by the state of Florida after having evaluated and listened to the defendant give a similar story and concluded battered spouse doesn't apply. So she was never asked to delve any deeper into it. Given the information that she did have, the limited information, she agrees, yes, Ms. Boone has battered spouse syndrome, but it doesn't apply to the case because she was the aggressor and she did not fulfill her obligations. And really just your gut common sense. Go back to jury selection. In jury selection, there was examples about bullies day after day doing something to somebody. And somebody raised their hand and said, don't they have to do something that day? Don't they have to do something that day? And he didn't. After he was put in fear of death and told her he can't breathe, the imminent threat of great bodily harm and death she is describing to you is him fighting for his life to escape. She did not fulfill her obligations. There's details that matter. And again, not to belabor it. I mean, the evidence in the body-worn camera and the 911 calls, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter of as who stated what. Who knows what happened between these two? You see them with the police. Can't believe anything they're saying. It's not offered to prove that she's a bad person. It's not offered to prove that Mr. Torres is a bad person. It's simply offered to call in question the reliability and credibility of what she said about the past. That's all that it's there for. But there are some nuggets and some Easter eggs. There was an argument made during closings that Mr. Torres knows not to do anything when being videotaped. Bizarrely, shortly thereafter, they showed a very edited clip of him attacking her and slapping the phone out of her hand. He knows he was being videotaped, and there was another video like it too. So to make the argument that he doesn't do anything, he's a good boy when he's being videotaped, it's belied by their own argument. They showed one of the videos. Learned helplessness. She seemed to control everything. I mean, his birth certificate, it gets torn up when he doesn't comply with her wishes. And you'll see the rest of the text messages if you choose to delve into them. But I would suggest you don't have to, given the jury instruction about aggressor. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a long 2 weeks, and you are making a very, very important decision for Ms. Boone, and a very, very important decision for Mr. Torres and the state of Florida and his family. He's dead. She killed him. She's admitting she killed him to have this affirmative defense if I was justified. It was not justified under our law. She does not get to decide that she has a license to kill because of her past grievances. The law requires her to stop using the force that she started applying to him. And she didn't. She didn't withdraw. She didn't tell him he was withdrawing. She didn't use every means available to try and stop this from happening. She didn't. And you know what was in her heart. She tells you it's hatred, ill will, spite, and venom. This is not a self-defense case under the law. Go back and follow the law. You cannot feel sorry for her. You cannot feel sorry for him. You cannot feel angry at her. You cannot feel angry at him. It's maddening to see their relationship. It is maddening. Nobody would want this life for yourselves or your children. It is violent nonsense, but it does not affect what she did and what her duties were under the law that night. She wanted to punish him. She did, and then she left him there. And she had an obligation, if you even believe her story about the imminent threat for him fighting for his life, she had an obligation to do something about it and not just go upstairs and let him suffocate. Thank you.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, I have some additional instructions to read to you. You would be so kind to turn to page 21 of 22. Instruction 3.12, verdict. You may find the defendant guilty.
Okay, it's going to be mute for a second because we're going to get ready to get into the verdict. And I think it's like about 6 minutes long. So let me get that video up. Hold a second.
I rely on pro writing aid to
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the verdict.
Bring in our jury. Everyone will remain seated. State, do you recognize our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, do you recognize our jury? Members of the jury, you may be seated. Thank you. Members of our jury, good evening. I understand that you've come to a verdict in this case.
Yes.
If you could please hand the verdict form to the deputy, please. Thanks, sir. Madam Clerk, if you could please publish the verdict.
In the circuit court of the
Ninth Judicial Circuit in Orange County, Florida. Case number 2020 CF 2603. The State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. Verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree as charged in the information. So say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 25th day of October 2024. The form has been signed by the full person.
Madam Clerk, please poll our jury.
Jury seat number 1, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Jury seat number 2, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Jury seat number 3, is this your true and
Yes, it
correct
is.
verdict? Jury seat number 4, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Jury seat number 5, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Jury seat number 6, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
Members of our jury, again, I want to thank you for your time, your sacrifice, and your attention in this matter. I know that we spent almost 2 weeks together, and it was not taken lightly, and I really appreciate the time and the effort and the sacrifice that you put into this case. I want to advise you now of your final instruction. Members, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and your consideration in this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak to anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. With that, members of the jury, again, I thank you for your service. I'm going to ask you to return to the deliberation room. I'll be back there shortly with your jury certificates, and thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. When is supposed to be the sentencing? Anybody know when is the sentencing? The date was the sentencing? Because I was watching other clip, but then that clip ended, so it had to be this one. Everything. But rest in peace, Jorge Torres. This woman did not care anything about him. She treated him like a child, belittled him every day. I know. I wish he never walked into that bar and met this woman. And his poor mother had to sit in the court and see all of this. Okay. Oh, Melanie said December 5th. Oh, okay. Yep, lock her up, lock her up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. This was a long one. Thank you all for hanging in here because I want to see, hopefully, Monday sentencing. She is done. Okay, December 2nd. Okay. All right, so around the 5th, December 5th was 2nd. Around that time, we'll be thinking. Okay, so cool. And go from there. All right, but thank you again for everybody for being here. Thank you for engaging. This was a long one, and I wanted to see everything. And Melanie, thank you for making me stay longer because that one was good. That last part. His poor mother, his family, his sister, daughter. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Moment of silence, and everybody have themselves a great and a blessed and safe night. I am planning to do one more clip. So I want to do when the psychological review to hear talk more about narcissism. Just curious, and that's about it. All right, adios. Rest in peace, Mr. Jorge Torres.